So today I am live here with Larry Sharpe. Larry Sharpe was the gubernatorial candidate in 2018. He ran against Andrew Cuomo to become governor of New York State. He is a politician in the state. He served in the Marine Corps in the 1980s and 90s. Thank you very much for your service. And thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All I want to say is, hey, buddy, what are you seeing?
So one of the things that I get a lot in my comment section is,
did you get the joke? You said you wanted to have a politician call you up one day and say that to you. So I did.
Went right over my head, man.
Remember you were talking about people who were like, who were cronies, and somebody would call you up and say that. Well, I just did.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Went right over my head. So something that shows up in my comment section here all the time is, well, you got what you voted for when I discuss something related to Cuomo. And one of the things that I mention to people is in 2018, I had a banner on all of my border repair videos that said, consider Larry Sharpe for governor. And you did run a campaign here. And one of the things that you mentioned a lot during your campaign is that 67 to 70% of New York State doesn't actually vote. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that affected your campaign when it came to trying to beat an incumbent like Cuomo?
There were many issues that my campaign had, many of them. One of them was the simple idea that we hadn't run a large campaign like that before as a third party. It just didn't work. We hadn't done it before, right? The Libertarian Party or any third party, generally speaking, we don't raise that much money, and we have a very limited talent pool. So at least half of my team came from out of the state. We just didn't have enough bodies in the state to actually run a campaign within the state. So we had to bring people from other states. We had to bring money from other states. It was very difficult to do. That was number one. The second thing is we didn't know how to run a campaign very well. I started running the campaign like a business, and that's a bad idea. A campaign is not a business. It's a passion project, and you have to change how you run a campaign. I'd never run before. So I ran early. I ran for almost 18 months. It was a long campaign. And I did over 30 events every month. And I literally didn't take a salary for about a year and a half. It was a full-time job. It was the only way I could make impact. We simply hadn't done that kind of campaign. And I ran the longest libertarian campaign ever. And I raised the most money ever with the exception of the presidential campaign. That's why we, did so much. We worked so hard to make that happen. And we made lots of mistakes. But we also learned a lot too, which is critical, which is why hopefully we can keep pushing things forward to do even better. But what are some of the problems that we had? Number one problem was the media wouldn't cover us. That was very hard for us. Number two, the polls wouldn't cover us. That was number two. And I learned the hard way how that works. Literally, we would ask them, we'd say, hey, press, why aren't you covering me? I'm running a campaign, as you said, you knew that. I was the nominee. I was traveling the state. I had a policy page. I had policy for everything. And they said, well, you don't buy ads. It was blatant pay to play. You don't buy ads. Yeah. Buy ads, you get coverage. Don't buy ads, sorry. Then I said, well, why am I not in the polls? So we called the poll company. Why am I not in the polls? And they said, well, you don't buy polls. I said, well, how much does a poll cost? They said $40,000. I only raised $500,000. So I didn't realize how much money mattered. I mean, I knew it mattered, obviously, but I didn't realize how much. It's a pay-to-play system. And the other hard part is out of the 5 people running, 4 of them were all getting a government check. I was the only one not. This is a system made for people who are either wealthy or establishment. And if you're neither of those two things, you're going to struggle. Did I go too far off?
No, not at all. That really does kind of explain it, because I saw that Cuomo spent something like $5 to $8 million in his campaign, and you had less than $1 million. And I did start doing some initial polling data in Massachusetts when I was thinking of doing a ballot initiative there, and I'm well aware of just how expensive those things can get, even if you are trying to do it on the cheaper end. So a lot of what I noticed is that when you were speaking about our governor, even back in 2018, you used to refer to Cuomo as Your Majesty. And you used to say that Cuomo thinks of himself as a dictator and a king. Tell me if I'm paraphrasing you from memory 4 years ago.
No, that's right.
And you also said that you had met him in 2014 and you had described him as a dick. Can you explain a little bit more why you refer to Cuomo as Your Majesty? What about him makes causes you to say that he thinks of himself as a king? And what about your experience with him led you to think this person is so horrible that I will run as the Libertarian candidate, even though I'll most likely lose, just to unseat this asshole?
Well, there were several things. The what really happened, the error that his enemies would often make is they would call him corrupt. That doesn't mean anything in New York State. I don't mean to be cruel, but it just doesn't, right? It doesn't land. It's whatever, right? I didn't call him corrupt. I said he was a bad guy. I said he was a bad human being. He was a bad person. And we found out he is. I knew he was. How do I know that? How did I know that? Because my day job is training, teaching, consulting, coaching executives. That's what I do for a living. That's how I make my money. That's what I do. That's how I pay my bills here in New York State. That's in New York City. That's how I pay my bills. I meet many of them. I meet narcissists all the time. I meet people like this all the time. They're in my world. I could watch him talk and go, oh, that guy's narcissist. Oh, yeah, that guy's a bad guy. I could tell. If you noticed, he was always saying things that were blatantly just untrue, and no one ever corrected him, which is why I started doing the Tuesdays with Andy segments that I do on my show, which I just basically go through his press conference and announce every lie he's made. I just kind of do that because he actually is that kind of person. I knew he was. When I met him the one time, I met him in 2014 when I was helping our then gubernatorial candidate, Mike McDermott, prepare for the debates. And I met him there. And he gave me like a dismissive handshake, whatever. When you look past someone, you know, that kind of handshake, you're shaking their hand, but you're looking behind them. He gave me one of those and just walked right by. So yeah, that's how I knew that he just didn't care at all. And I was being polite and nice. And I was a New Yorker, so in theory, I could have voted for him. I didn't, but I mean, I could have. He just walked right by me. And then what I kept seeing is every time that he would make an announcement or a mandate or pronouncement, he would yell how it's the law. He would always say it's the law. And it's
law.
Correct. And the second thing he would always do is he would speak as if he's not in charge. So he would begin to berate the state as if he wasn't in charge. He'd say, what we got to do is do this thing. And you can't do it this way. You got to do it that way. And I would think to myself, haven't you been governor for 8 years? Like this, are you looking in a mirror? Who are you talking to? And he would say it with such dismissiveness, so aggressively saying it, it was obvious that he was a narcissist, that he simply was in his own world. This is why he honestly believed that he would never be caught. So as I was going through the state, I met many people and I met many politicians. And never forget one mayor of a city, and this mayor was a Democrat. This is 2018. He was talking about Cuomo. And he said, Cuomo is what happens when a henchman becomes the boss. And I never forgot that. So I would go to other people and I would say, other politicians, and I would say, hey, this guy told me that. What do you think? And I met dozens of politicians. Not one said he was wrong. Not one. They all were like either, yeah, that's him, or yeah, sure. Yeah. And here's the next thing. They all feared him, to include Democrats. This is how you know he's a monarch. He rules through fear.
Now, one thing I want to ask you about that. I remember when it came to e-bike legislation a while back, he had vetoed it. And I forget which co-sponsor it was, but one of the co-sponsors of that legislation had criticized him on social media, and many rumors are floating that the reason he vetoed it was to send a message to that person not to criticize him on social media.
Correct.
And that this was the type of person he was. And there were a lot of people that I remember having criticized Trump for being thin-skinned in some regards. And like Cuomo kind of took a lot. He was kind of like the D version of some of the negative aspects of what people would criticize Trump for. And I would notice that if you criticized him or you said something that you weren't supposed to publicly, that he would then find a way to get at you. And one of the questions I have is, how did he survive as long as he did if there was so many people around him that didn't like him, that he bullied? How was he able to survive as a bully in a state for that long?
Sure. He set the system up. And this is why a lot of people would get upset at their local politician and say, why doesn't my local guy or my local gal stand up against him? Because one of the things I talked about and still talk about is not having so much money go to Albany and not having so much money come back out of Albany. And people think, well, that's because, you're a libertarian. It's irrelevant. whether I'm libertarian or not. It's because the more money that's stuck in Albany, the easier it is to grift. Now I've just got to send one thug to Albany to bribe or convince or berate 2 or 3 people, and now I get the entire state's budget of X. That's worth it. But imagine if there were 62 separate, there are 62 counties in New York, for those you don't know. If there were 62 separate places I've got to go grift off of, now I got to send 62 thugs out to get berate and do all these other people, 2 or 3 other people to make it happen to get not as much money. It isn't as easy. Well, he set that up a long time ago, and it's been going more and more that way. Why does that matter? Because he also sets up commissions and boards, and he sets those commissions and boards up in a way that says, I'm doing it so I can be out of it, right? So I can be neutral. But he makes sure that 2 or 3, always the majority of the people on the board, he handpicks. One, that's how he rewards those people who are good to him. He literally made over $400,000 every year in donations off of people he put on boards. So you give him $40,000, the max you can give, he would then put you on a board. Well, now he's going to hook you up, right? So now he also tells you what to do, how to do things. So what winds up happening is you're a local politician and you want to get something built. You want to do something. You want to build something out. That probably will take either state funds or some commission has to say yes. One of the 2 things are true. Well, he controls the state funds and controls the commissions. So how can you get anything built in your town? You can't.
Okay, so
and he was vindictive. So he physically would stop you if you didn't support him, and then you couldn't get anything built.
Okay, so just so I can try and understand this, because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So you could pay him money, and if after you paid Cuomo money, then he would be willing to appoint you to a board.
Correct.
What would be the benefit of being appointed to that board if I were to pay someone to be appointed to the board? What do I get?
I love that. Let's say, for example, you want to be part of, say, the brand new Office of Cannabis Management, which is completely useless, but that's the new thing coming up. Now we're legalizing cannabis, supposedly. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown of all of the deaths from cannabis since it's been in the black market for decades and for years. Finished. None. There are no deaths from cannabis, right? Doesn't exist. And it's been in the black market for how many hundreds of years? Been in the black market, no deaths from cannabis. So now that we're going to legalize it, we better have a board, because I don't know why, but we are. Why? Because let's say that you're on that board. You pay me $40,000 to get on that board. Who's going to buy up and build up all the cannabis farms now with the new rules? Permanent money. It's not going to be cannabis people, because it will cost over $250,000 to get a license, right? And take years. So the only people who are going to do it are going to be basically big commercial real estate, big real estate investors, those type, permanent capital. Well, you now can tell those people and see those people and meet those people, and they have to pitch you, don't they? You now have access to huge amounts of permanent capital. You do, Lewis. Isn't that great? What can you do with that information, that money, and that knowledge? You can make a whole lot more money. And then what you'll do is you'll get off of this board eventually. When you get off of it, you'll become one of the consultants. I'll give you the best example I can possibly give you. A guy named Lawsky. You know we have a bit license in New York State?
There's
for those of you like cryptocurrency? Yes, but for cryptocurrency and for blockchain, you have to have a bit license. Guy named Lawsky, he decided, well, I'm on the finance board. I'll create the rules for a bit license. And he did. He created a maze. I'm not joking. Look it up if you want to. Lawsky. He then left and became a consultant. You have to pay him 6 figures so that he can show you how to get to the maze that he built.
So if you become, okay, let me just get this straight. Just so explain like I'm an idiot. So I pay money in order to get on a board. I get on a board. I then get to create the rules that other people then have to jump through. And then there's an incentive structure in place for the people who then have to jump through those rules to do things that help me out.
Yes. Or literally hire you right afterwards for hundreds of thousands of dollars so you can get them through. You wrote the rules.
How much progress has there been from, let's say, Tammany Hall to now in rooting out corruption?
It is it's much nicer. It is much nicer. It's still just as bad. It's just much nicer.
Now, one of the things that you said also is that in your campaign, you said that New York State absolutely hates anything new, in spite of the fact that we're considered, a financial capital of the world. We have all these tech companies here. You have Google with large buildings here. Facebook just rented a bunch of plays. Whether it's vaping, marijuana, blockchain, or Uber, New York State really likes old money and really doesn't seem to like new ideas. And we also saw
100%.
that with them banning e-bikes, in spite of the fact that they're not willing to enforce this law. If they did, Grubhub would not be able to serve in New York State, because
We're still
99%
fighting
of the people that
Uber.
live. Yeah. So like,
We're
can
still
you talk
fighting
a little bit about
Uber.
that and why that is?
Yeah, New York is actually conservative. People think it isn't. It's actually conservative in many ways socially. We think we're not, but no, we're actually we're actually relatively conservative. What I mean by that, think about it. We're one of the last places to legalize cannabis, and we're doing it in a way that's only for big business. The age of consent is the highest here. Age of consent in New York State is 17. Every neighboring state 16. So we are conservative in many different ways. It's just who we are. We love big money, old money, because the state, New York City specifically, has been run by Wall Street firms forever. And our government is so silly and so completely out of touch, it hasn't realized something. And you'll know this. 20 or 30 years ago, tech used to follow finance. That's not true anymore. Finance now follows tech. So now you see all the banks, and most people, again, who don't know this, it used to be on Wall Street full of banks. Now there's only one bank left on Wall Street. Only Deutsche Bank's on Wall Street because they own the building. Every other bank has left. They've all gone to Park Avenue, and most of them have their major outpost in San Francisco because they want to be next to tech. So now finance follows tech, and with more and more tech, you don't even need finance to be in New York City anymore, except for algorithms to buy things at the stock exchange, right? Because the algorithms and that kind of thing. So you want your algorithms to be here, but that's it. Otherwise, you don't even need to be here in New York City. In fact, New York Stock Exchange almost moved to, I think it was Austin or Dallas. I think it was Dallas. They're going to move to Dallas. They're going to pack up and go because Cuomo was going to, believe it or not, to raise money. He was going to tax transaction fees. And the exchange said, do that and we're out. And he went, just kidding. That was it, just kidding. And he stopped.
Now, one of the things that really, the initial thing that attracted me to your campaign wasn't even my disdain for Cuomo, nor was it that you're a libertarian. It was your take on education. You were the only candidate that described education in a manner where I realized that you weren't just saying, let's give more money to the teachers and let's fund and support it. You actually explained it the way it is. So you said that senior year is gym, study hall, and smoking weed, which is what it is. I went to Susan Wagner High School. I know. So, Grant, there was a 20-year gap. You were in high school in the 80s. I was in high school in the 2000s. That's what I did. I had my little Cohen A2 little portable media player. I was watching episodes of 24. My economics teacher was zero interest in anything he was explaining, just reading out of a book. It was so boring and dry. I learned more from reading Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics on my own afterwards. So I'd have my book while he was, talking to the class and regaling stories of his career. I would have my little A2 MP3 player, be watching reruns of 24. My headphones run up like this. It was a total waste of time. And what you had said you wanted to do, and feel free to tell me where I'm getting this wrong here, is get rid of the senior year of high school and have it be either training for college, training for a trade, or you get to start your life early, and we use that savings that we have from not spending money on a senior year that is just babysitting kids who are smoking weed all day for something else. And the way you had proposed it is that we are going to cut the budget for teachers to give more money to teachers. And what you had explained was that the way it works right now is, in order to get $4 billion of federal funding, that you needed to obey all the federal regulations, and that the federal regulations had bloated the administrative staff so much that we were spending more than we were getting from it. So the way you were trying to explain it on many of the talk shows and the news shows you were on at the time, including Joe Rogan, was we are going to pay our teachers more by cutting the budget. And they didn't understand this at all. The idea that I am going to get rid of these administrators that are an anchor on the teachers, that are telling them how to teach, going over their lesson plans, telling them what to do. You were going to get rid of that so that you would be able to actually pay the teachers more money. And also, part of your plan was what sounded like what you wanted to do was get rid of some of the standardized testing, which was horrible. We used to have 3 months a year for the regions, and I'm sure you had something similar in the 80s, where our teachers would stop teaching us anything of note, and they would start teaching us how to answer the questions in a test for 3 months so that they could keep their jobs and so we could graduate. And everybody remembers this. It was horrible. When we started training for the regions, all of the fun was sucked out of the class, and we actually learned less. We just learned how to pass a test. Why do you think it was so difficult to get this across to people, whether it was in the news, journalism, or even Joe Rogan? Because I listened to you talk to Joe Rogan for 2 hours, and even though you explained your plan very coherently, as to how you were going to be able to have more money for teachers and more time for students, that everybody just kind of seemed to strawman it.
If you want to have a good idea, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, you want it to be radical enough to be noticed, but familiar enough to be accepted, right? If you can get that perfect, everyone tries for that perfect piece, right? It's radical enough for me to go, but familiar enough for me to go, okay, I could do that. I think mine might have been too radical. Maybe I didn't have enough of the other part. Maybe I'm not really sure. But the issue is most people don't understand education. They just think, well, education is just teaching my kids stuff, right? That's it. They don't realize what a racket it is. Now, the point that I want to bring up here that's important is the average teacher in New York in 2018, I'm not sure if the number is still the same, made about $80,000 a year. Average, skewed by New York City, but about $80,000 was the average. The average administrator made double that. Double what a teacher makes.
And they're not doing any of the teaching.
Thank you.
And they are actually hamstringing the teacher in terms of what is their lesson plan going to be? How are you going to be able to teach? What are you allowed to do in the classroom? So not only are they taking money out of the system, but they are also making the class worse by getting in the way of the experience that teachers have with the students and that teachers have with the parents.
If anyone knows of a teacher who's left.
How is that extreme?
What?
How is what you said you may have gone a little too extreme. I apologize if I interrupted you, but how did that manage to get construed as extreme throughout this campaign?
Because
that sounded completely reasonable to me as someone who remembered his high school experience.
People couldn't understand the concept of lowering the amount of money going to education. That concept was unimaginable to people. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. The idea is if you lower the amount of money going to education, by default, you are hurting students. That is just the way we've been taught, that the only way to deal with students is to give them more money. That's what we've been talking about forever. And that's why it seemed extreme. People just couldn't get it. So I had to be deeper with it. So let me keep walking down this road if I could. So if you know a teacher who's left, who's just walked away, who's left, most of the time they're going to tell you, oh, it's because of the paperwork, because of the red tape, administrators. That is the number one reason why teachers leave. So our best teachers leave because of administrators who are telling them what to do. And my point was, if you're going to do what we do in New York State, and many states do this too, teachers have to jump through hoops to be teachers. They have to have master's degrees. They have to do teaching. They've got to have all kinds of education, credentials. We make them jump through hoops. I'm thinking if you're someone who goes through all those hoops, you probably care. That's my assumption. I mean, I don't know unless you want to punish yourself. You probably care, and you're probably good at what you do. So then why do I have administrators tell you what to do? So I make you do all the credentials, then I treat you like you don't know anything. If I'm going to do that, then don't have the credentials. Just hire high school graduates and have the administrators tell them what to do. Why get someone to jump through all the hoops that teachers have to go through and then treat them like they're kids? It doesn't make any sense. So either hire high school kids or let teachers teach. Either of those makes sense to me. What we're doing is completely wrong. So let me keep going if I could. I wanted to plan to be a K through 10 model, not a K through 12. I didn't want to get rid of the last year. I want to get rid of the last 2 years. At 16, you take a test. If you pass the test, you then get a high school diploma. Done. Now you have 4 different options. Every kid has 4 options. Option 1, go to a prep school. If you know what school you want to go to, like you know that you want to be in literature or science or math, if you know that already, and some kids do, some don't, but if you know, then go to a prep school that will prep you to go there. Instead of right now, 12th grade being a wasted year, and then the first year of college is 13th grade. Because they're prepping you because you don't know anything. But instead, you could then take 2 years to prepare yourself for your school. So when you go to college, maybe you can graduate in 3 years. If you're going to go for a higher degree, that's awesome. Do your thing. So you can go to a prep school if you want to. But let's say you don't want to go to college. Say you want to be a plumber or a mechanic or work with your hands. Go to trade school. Just go to trade school. In this state, and again, I can't speak for other states, but I know in this state, we need tradesmen badly. That's why we have so much foreign labor because American kids aren't doing this, right? You might say, well, Larry, why are we stopping them from doing this? Because again, the federal funds. The federal funds forces kids to take standardized tests because that's how they get paid, by standardized tests. And the second thing that schools get paid by is how they place people in college. Does it matter if the kids should go to college? No. Does it matter what college they go to? No. Does it matter if they graduate? No. Did they place them into college? Then they get more money. And because that's the system, the people are responding to the system. So now, do they care if you learn civics? No. Home ec? No. How to write a checkbook? How to do a checkbook? No. Finance? No. What they care about is math and science, ACT, SAT. That's all that matters because that's how they're rewarded. They get their money based upon that, so they act accordingly. Why is the curriculum terrible? Because of that. That's the reason why the curriculum's terrible. Why are the teachers unhappy? Because of that. Why do kids not know what they want in life? Because we're not doing testing, which standard testing should be when you're in high school, not for whether you pass a test, but for your aptitude. What are you good at? What do you want to do? What's your first career? Start that right away. Let's say you don't want a trade school. Let's say you don't want prep school. Awesome. Go right to college. If you're one of those kids who's super smart, and many of us are, and go right there, go to college at 17. Just go. Why are you wasting your time doing two things? Go to college. If you don't like that, no worries. Go get a job. Learn a work ethic. Go learn some. Learn that. And what we don't have in this country now, and people always blame the kids on this, and it isn't the kids' fault, is they say these kids have no work ethic. Well, what do you expect? You've asked nothing of them. You haven't asked them to do anything except take a test and show up in school once in a while, and you get rewarded because you showed up. That's why you get rewarded. If you're late, so what? Someone else's fault, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. So now you have a situation where they waste their last year of high school. Then when they go to college, the average kid right now takes 6 years to graduate college. That's the average. Some go, if they even graduate. And it's heavily skewed towards women anyway. So now all of a sudden, you got a kid now who's 24 years old, a person who's 24 years old. They've never had a job. And you wonder why they don't have a work ethic. You've never taught them one. But if they have to go to work at 16 or make decisions about their life at 16, they'll begin to have some decision-making process. But Larry, they'll make a mistake at 16. Yeah, when they can still go home, when they're 16 years old. The cost of failure at 16 is nothing compared to the cost of failure at 26. We got 32 kids now who are 26 making mistakes, 24 making mistakes, and they're paying a high price for that. They're going back home to mom at 30. Well, I have an idea. Make your mistakes at 16. By the time you're 18, 19, 20, you learned a couple things. That's the real answer. The idea to think that we shouldn't be having our kids. You used to be able to join the military at 17. I mean, I did at 17. So now you can't make a decision at 16. It's crazy. We have to change the entire system. If you do this right, how do you pay for it? Last piece. How do you pay for it? Right now, when I got out of the Marine Corps gave me the GI Bill. And that was, they gave me a certain amount of money. I forgot what it was. I think it was $100,000, whatever it was, that I could use for college over the course of 10 years. We're going to follow that model. We're going to give every kid at 16, New York State will pay $20,000 for 2 years. And you have 5 years to use it. Good luck. Here's what I know is going to happen. Without question, I'm 100% sure of this. And I'll bet any amount of money on this. The second this plan pops up, you will find lots of schools popping up. You know how much they'll cost for 2 years? $20,000. Because it's government guaranteed money. And banks love government guaranteed money. So they will loan to these people. They'll start all these things. They'll start these new schools. We'll have tons of schools. I know someone said 20,000 isn't enough. Yes, it is. You are incorrect. The market responds to government money. That's how it works. Not just once, every single time, without exception. If the government says it costs, here's $20,000, that's how much it will cost. There'll be a bunch of prep schools pop up. Well, Larry, they'll be bad schools. They're voluntary schools. If they're crappy schools, you won't go to them. You'll only go to schools that are good schools because you'll go there because you want to go there. And I say, Larry, $20,000 is a lot of money. No, we're spending $28,000 per year per kid right now in New York State. This is $10,000 for each one. $10,000 a year. $10,000 for 2 years versus $56,000 for 2 years. We're cutting the budget right there. Plus, some kids aren't even going to use it. Some kids are going to get scholarships. Nothing but a savior. We save everywhere. It's exactly the right answer. And if you like it, stay in school, man. I'm not forcing you. It's voluntary. Stay in school.
I thought it was closer to 14 to 15,000 per year per student in New York. 24.
28,000.
28.
Yep. I think New York City's 28. Some areas are 24, 25. The average is like 26. It's like the average.
Now, one of the parts of your campaign that I liked is you had said, I forget if it was you, I believe it was you. You said a lot of libertarians start by saying, like get rid of all of government or get rid of the DMV and do all these radical things. And what you wanted to start at is rather than like all of these very, very abstract ideas and, bordering on anarcho-capitalism, just basic things like, how about we take the emperor's name off the bridge and allow Verizon or T-Mobile to rent the name of that bridge, and then we put that money towards education or any of these other programs? You were talking about getting Cuomo's name off of the bridge so that it's not a state that where it seems like we just brand things after the king and we label it the Verizon Bridge or the T-Mobile Bridge. And normal people like you and I, we're probably still going to call it the Williamsburg Bridge anyway. But you put their name on the bridge, and then you have them pay 80 or 90 or $100 million a year. And you had said you had people reaching out to you to actually do this. What were some of the more libertarian leaning policies that you were leaning into? And were there any areas where the press or the media were strawmanning you and saying, this man wants to get rid of the entire government and get rid of the DMV and have no driver's license? How did that go?
Remember, it is literally easier in the two-party system, because if it's just two-party system, all that means is other guy bad, right? If you ask a Democrat how to fix, a problem, he says, well, the Republicans are going to kill you. If you ask a Republican how to fix a problem, he says, well, Democrats going to kill you. They don't have answers. I'm the only candidate who actually had plans for virtually everything. I had actual plans. And you might go, Larry, I don't like your plan. Okay, help me fix it. Let's talk it through. There is no other plan. And if you think I'm making it up, who's here from 2018? Nobody. Who's still talking from 2018? Nobody. Because they had no plans that made any sense. They had nothing. They were just people who were saying, I'm going to be great, blah, blah. Terrible. So what people do all the time is they would do what I think Douglas said. Stupid idea, right? You can't do billboards, whatever. Yeah. But yet we have stadiums with names on it already. We literally have stadiums. We're already doing it. We have stadiums with names on them already, and we have Adopt a Highway program for people to clean roads. So it's already being done. It's not a stupid idea. It's a brilliant idea. But the problem is it doesn't look good. And he's right. It doesn't look good. It looks dystopian when you're going to have Verizon Bridge on this. It does look bad. But here's your other option. Your other option is we keep $18 tolls for the working poor and middle class of this city. That's your other option. So because you don't like how it looks, you're like, I don't like how it looks. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to punish the working poor and the middle class because the wealthy can afford it, or they already live in New York City, Manhattan. So they don't pay the tolls, or they're wealthy and they don't care. So I want to stop having massive tolls. I'd like to raise money other than through taxation. I'd like the working poor and the middle class to not get punished in my state every day. We've lost 2 million New Yorkers in the past 11 years. What's been working? Nothing. My ideas are damn good. It's absolutely a good idea. Now, I know someone's going to tell me, but Larry, they're going to screw us over. I hear it all the time. They're going to screw us over like they do with the stadiums. No, because the stadiums are a broken hybrid model full of grift. Mine is not that. Mine is very simple. We, as the state, own, or as the city, own the bridge. A simple leasing agreement. If you want to have your name on it, you write a simple agreement. No hybrid model, no mixed ownership, none of that garbage. That's silly. But that's what happens now all the time. It's you want it, you get it, and you front load the plan. Say it's a 12-year lease. Say it's $1.2 billion. You pay over half of it in the first 3 years, and you front load out in case they screw up. Then we take the contract. Now, but the bridge will fall down. First off, bridges fall down right now in New York State. So the idea of thinking it doesn't fall down, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Bridges fall down right now in New York State. So that's another garbage answer I get all the time. You know what? We still own the bridge, so we still inspect the bridge. If the bridge goes below a C, we then take the contract away. Simple. You actually have a consequence. What's the consequence now if a bridge falls? Nothing. You just got a fallen bridge. That's it. There's actually a consequence now. But more importantly, There's just in New York City, there's over 12 bridges we can do this with. 12 bridges and tunnels. Over 12. That is billions of dollars that now could go to repair an MTA that used to be used by over 4 million New Yorkers. Now it's less than 2 million. How are you going to fix that boondoggle? Before COVID, New York State wrote a check to the MTA for $6 billion every year because it couldn't make enough money. How are you going to fix that without a plan like this? There's no idea. Well, Larry, people won't spend the money. It's too expensive. Amazon marketing budget is $10 billion. $100 million is nothing. They would laugh at that. They go, oh, yeah, it's in my front pocket. I was going to use that to cross the bridge. They got that money. It's no big deal whatsoever. It is definitely a good idea, but I'm still not done. MTA in New York City. At night, you know this, it's half running. They run half a train here, half a train there, back and forth. Every other train should be a freight train. We should be bringing freight into New York City. Freight through the subway systems. Yes, we should. Well, Larry, you can't do that. The system's not made for that. I know it's a 100-year-old system that we're never going to repair. We've been putting Band-Aids on it for literally 50 years. Well, how are we going to get rebuilt? It's too expensive. We can't do it. It took us how many years? 15 years to build one Second Avenue subway line. We're so goddamn incompetent. And it costs us 6 times more than the average city to build something in New York City. We're so broken. I have an idea. Instead, why don't we lease it out again? Amazon, FedEx, whomever. We'll lease that to them. Well, Larry, they'll have to rebuild it. I know. So that will front load it again. They rebuild it. If they rebuild the area, then they get the naming rights on it for, say, 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years. We get a brand new MTA system without taxpayer money being spent for it, no extra taxes. And here's the best part. Now there's less trucks in the city, less wear and tear on our roads, less wear and tear on our bridges, and less congestion in Manhattan because we don't have to have the big trucks coming in at all because now they're freight training it all in. And we get a brand new system. And guess what? At night, it's only at night. So every other train is a freight train. So we don't even lose service. It's the same service. Everything's cheaper. No new taxes. It can be done. These are the ideas that I came up with. You can not like it if you want to. I don't mind. You can. But I have an idea. What is the other idea?
And having an idea is better than not doing anything, which is what's happened for the longest time. I have I spent over 12 years taking the L train home and then getting to Lorimer or Myrtle and them saying, there will be a shuttle bus to Broadway Junction. I mean, what you're saying about Band-Aids, we have had Band-Aids and we have had new politicians come in and say what they're going to do, and they never do anything. And like, okay, they may not like one of your ideas, but if your idea actually explains how you're going to pay for that 100-year-old switch to be replaced with something that's not a piece of shit, would it really be the worst thing in the world if you are using it to freight things back and forth at 2 to 5 a.m. when there's one person per train car? Because as many people on this channel know, I'm a tiny bit of an insomniac and also a workaholic. I've taken the train many times at 1 or 4 in the morning, and there's not a lot of people on those trains, and there's a lot of wasted potential going on there. Now,
I know I'm winning because some of your chat is doing ad hominem attacks on me, so I know I'm winning.
No, that's how you know you're getting. It's YouTube.
I know I'm winning because they can't take the idea, so they go, "He's a bad guy." Love that.
Yeah. So one of the things you had brought up is licensing, and you had brought up how you are absolutely for licensing when it comes to safety, and you are for licensing but you are not for licensing if it's something that you would ask your friend to do. So if you would say to your downstairs neighbor, "Can you walk my cat? Would you braid my hair?" I don't see where there's a license for that. But would you ask your neighbor to take out your kidney, or to let's say if you call 9, would you have your neighbor, if you got shot, help you with a wound? Probably not. What could a governor do to fix that type of problem at the city level? Because in New York City, I have a license here. I've had it for 9 years. They have never come in to ask they've never asked to check my solder joints. They've never asked to see if the adhesive is right on my screen.
It's a money grab. They don't care. No. It's a money grab. Your licensing has nothing to do with safety. Nothing to do with safety. Licensing is a money grab for the state and control. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, "Oh, you won't follow our mandates, we will take your license." They did it with liquor licenses. What's the value of a liquor license, right? Well, we have to control people from selling to minors. You do that already. You do sting operations already. You can have sting operations that still see if someone is selling, alcohol to minors. If they do it, then you put them in jail or fine them or whatever. The liquor license is irrelevant. You still run it anyway. Your license is irrelevant. They can still check on you anyway. The license is a money grab, number one. than a way to control you so you do as they say. So I want to change all licensing from licensing to instead credentialing. I'm not against the state having having guidelines for you to follow at all. They should. It's a good idea. In my perfect world, in my better world, I should say, the government is an actual repository for information that people could trust. That's not where it is now, but I wish that were true. And so now there's a state guideline for to braid hair, to cut hair, to be an IT guru, whatever the case may be. Now you have a choice. Lois, you have a choice. Do you want that credential? Follow their rules, get their stamp, place it on your place of business. They see I got the stamp. If your community cares about that stamp, then they will go in and to your facility or whatever because they trust the government stamp. If they don't care, they'll just walk in anyway. It doesn't matter. Up to them. The community decides if they care about your credential or not. But not just that credential. What about other credentials? Does it like Microsoft have credentialing? Why don't you get their Microsoft? Can you work without a Microsoft credential? You can. Some people are going to trust you. Some people aren't. That's fine. It's up to them. The consumers decide what's right for them. Now, there's an exception, as I mentioned, and my general rule is general, and that is, would you ask your friend to do it? And that's exactly right. In New York State, it costs you about $20,000, give or take, to get everything required to get a license to braid hair in New York City. I'm not joking. About $20,000. It's a license to walk a dog.
For mine. I paid $350 for mine.
Yep.
So that I did. Holy.
Yes, $20,000. Which is why what does it wind up being? What the licensing grift or money grab actually is, it's a war on poor entrepreneurs. That's really what it is. It's a war on brown and black entrepreneurs, to be very even clearer than that. That's what it is. It's a war on poor entrepreneurs in New York City. Most of them are brown and black. Most of them are white if you go outside New York City. But in New York City, most of them are brown and black. So that's what it's a war on. So how about when I was a kid in the Bronx? I grew up in the 70s in the Bronx. There was no Uber. We had gypsy cabs. So we had gypsy cabs. Kids used to braid hair on the stoop. That's what it was. So I'm not against you getting a credential. But again, would you ask your friend to do it? Would you ask your friend to walk your dog? Yeah. Why in the world would you need to have any type of credential for that? You can if you want to. You can have the official dog walker of the year or whatever. I don't care. But again, would I ask my friend to represent me in court? Would I ask my friend to take out my gallbladder? I wouldn't. Get a license for that. No worries. If it is something like life and death like that, I have no problem with a license. But everything else, a credential is fine. Let people, particularly in poor neighborhoods, particularly in those, let them begin to grow and learn business. How many people, and you know this, my friend, are in a poor neighborhood now and want to start a business and can't because they can't afford to start a business. They know what to do, but they can't afford. Now you might go, well, Larry, then there'll be fake, credentials. That's fraud. Fraud's a crime. You punish people for that 100%. You absolutely do not at all punish people. You let people slide for fraud. You do not want to fraud your consumer. So that's fraud.
Now, how would you actually fix these types of problems at the state level, since a lot of the licensing issues are at the New York City level? How is that something that could be fixed from the governor's office?
I think you start it at this state level and everyone's going to figure it out because all the other areas will grow. You see it already now with like construction and such, right? Imagine if, say, in Nassau County, you didn't have to have a license, but you can have a credential. Imagine if you had that in, say, I don't know, Westchester. You would see people go to those areas. The city would figure it out, and eventually they would change. Now, not de Blasio. De Blasio is a true believer. He will let the entire city empty out before he would change anything. But if you get a more normal human being as a mayor, then that would change. Yes.
When it comes to licensing, I spoke about an experience that I had recently where I had a laptop for sale. They said you need to have an entry in the Leads Online database for anything you buy. I said, I have records showing that I did not buy this from this customer that left this here. Would you like to see them? He walked outside, got on his cell phone, came back in 5 minutes later and said, and left us a fine. And then we called up to ask, how can we be in compliance with this law? I spoke to I didn't speak to the commissioner. I left a message for the commissioner.
Yep.
I've sent certified mail. I've sent email. I have called. It has been over 4 months now. I have yet to be able to get in contact with anybody who could explain to me how this law works and how to be in compliance with it. Is this now? A lot of people in my comment section will say this is by design to make the city money.
It is.
I'm not that cynical. I think that it's because they have absolutely no quality control and and that it's incompetence. Is this incompetence, or is this done
No,
by design so that the city can make as much money as possible?
it's both. It's incompetence because they don't care, because it's made for money. Why would you make your system work and then it works to where actually people wouldn't give you the money, right? It's not what it's about. When COVID hit, I'll give you the perfect example of what actually happened when COVID hit. If you remember when COVID hit, the state made regulations, and most of the regulations were actually for businesses, retail businesses like bars and clubs, things like that. And if you didn't follow the rules, they would fine you. You remember that was happening early on, about a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
The state will come out and then decide, hey, you know what? You didn't do this. And then they charge you $3,000, $2,000, whatever the case may be, right? They would do that. Well, the counties got upset. They said, you're coming in here and you're robbing our people. They said, these are our people. We get to rob our people, not you. So I'm serious. So then they made their own county rules. Now, the county rules were not the same as the state rules. So that means you couldn't be in compliance with both. This was a serious problem. Ask anybody who was a retailer. They will tell you that. You could not be in compliance with both because they were different rules. So basically, you had to decide, who would I rather be robbed by? Would I rather be robbed by my county, or would I rather be robbed by my state? If you prefer being robbed by your county, you follow state rules and the county robs you. If you're robbed by your state, you follow county rules and the state robs you. You decide whatever you would prefer. And that's what winds up happening. There's no need. There's no one to do any type of appeal because they don't care if you're right or wrong. It's a money grab. It's a money grab, not because the governor himself cares. The governor actually doesn't care specifically. What the governor does, he sets up a situation to where everyone has to keep making money. This is the idea that New York State does very well, using law enforcement as a profit center. Law enforcement should not be a profit center ever.
When it comes to how COVID was handled in New York State, what was done right? What was done wrong? What would you have done different as a governor? Obviously, as much as I dislike Andrew Cuomo, he was handling things on the fly with limited information at the time and limited help from the federal government when this first started.
Nope.
So
nope.
What would
Total
you have
lie.
done
Nope.
differently?
Nope. I give him nothing. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I literally, and if anyone thinks,
I'm trying to hold back my hate for him a little bit. So, but
nope,
you know,
you should keep it. Nope.
Okay.
Let me be very clear. If anyone cares, I did this on purpose.
I want to learn. Let me know.
Mark, if anyone cares, you can go to my Sharpe Way YouTube page. In March of 2020, a year and a half ago, I put 6 or 10 separate videos out exactly how I would have handled COVID. Now, I wasn't perfect because I only knew what I knew a year and a half ago, but I didn't remove them. They are still there. You can go watch them if you want to. And I explained exactly how everything should be done, how we should pay for it, and what we should do with what I knew then. And here's what I'm 100% sure, and I'm vindicated. If you care, you can check it out. My plan, way better than his plan. And let me tell you what my plan was.
Yep, your plan,
absolutely.
Look at me taking
Number
credit
one
for your
thing, when I heard, if I had been him, I would have known earlier. I really knew about COVID in about February-ish is when I figured out that it was getting bad. If I was Cuomo, I would have started earlier. So if I had known, I would have started in January, maybe in December. The first thing you do is when you realize how the elderly are being hurt worse than the youth, the first thing is realize, okay, that's what I know so far. We didn't know if masks worked or not. We had no idea. Might have worked, might not have worked. The average New Yorker didn't know. I also did not know at the time. So what I said is, the first thing I do is I say, if there's any nonprofit that wants to sell masks, I'm going to immediately get rid of any sales tax to sell a mask in New York State. Any nonprofit can sell a mask in New York State for no sales tax. Go ahead and do it. Then I'm going to put on the website, here is what the CDC guidelines are for a mask. Here what other people think is for a mask. Good luck, guys. Go try. That's not the end of it. That's just one thing I would do. Next, I then rescind all distilling laws in New York State to allow people to make hand sanitizer if they want to on their own. Then allow them, which is what happened later. 6 months later, they started doing this. What I did, they did 6 months later, right away. So now, again, I focus on nonprofits. The reason why I focus on nonprofits, if you want to create hand sanitizer and sell it, no sales tax, and you may distill it on site if you want to. Up to you to do so if you want to. Those two things in itself, most people would have done nothing. But some early adopters would have jumped on board and had cool masks like Yankee mask or whatever mask and hand sanitizers. Why does any of that matter? Because what that would have done is begin to make the culture in New York State back in January. So thinking, I should start worrying about my health here. Something could be happening. I become mentally thinking about, should I be washing my hands more? Should I be caring about who I talk? Should I be worrying about this? I want the culture to care about this without me enforcing anything. And that will be the beginnings. I'm still not done. I then rescind any laws on 3D printing. 3D printing, right? So that you can create a test and or a ventilator. You can create a test or a ventilator. Do what you want. Again, no sales tax if you want to sell it. People will start making tests and ventilators. Remember, by the time April came around, we realized, or May came around, we realized that a bunch of our tests didn't work because we could only make certain tests because of the federal guidelines. Only certain people can make tests, and they were failing up until June. They were failing. With mine, what would have happened? You'd have figured out which ones work and which ones didn't work easily by February. You would have known early which ones are going to work, which ones aren't. Not just that, you then could, people could actually make ventilators. You don't have to buy them from China. We actually could have made them literally if we want to do a 3D printing. I don't care. Make them. I'm still not done. Now I rescind all certificate of need laws. Right now in our state, you can't open up another bed unless the governor says you need to. I'm not joking. What
do you mean by open up a bed? I'm sorry.
You can a hospital can't add more beds unless the governor says so. I'm not joking. It's called a certificate of need. So I'll rescind them. There are about 50,000 beds in New York State right now, emergency room beds. I'm sorry, hospital beds. 50,000. You know how many there are now after COVID? 50,000. No change. No change. I would allow them to do it if they want to. Just, it's rescinded. If you want to make more beds, make more beds. You know your world better than I do. Go ahead. But I'm still not done. On top of that, you now rescind any sleepover in common room Department of Building codes for those nonprofits like local churches, American Legions. Why? Because we knew early on that the people who were most worried were those who were elderly. So you have two options. One, let's say you're young and you want to work. So you work, but you don't want to go home to grandma. So great, sleep in a church. Leave grandma alone at home. You go to work and you now sleep in the church or at the American Legion or wherever's the nonprofit, the community, the civic center, right? Allow them if they want to let people sleep there. And you could have medical personnel, volunteers there, because that's the next thing. In New York State, if you are not licensed in New York State, you may not practice any form of medicine in New York State. I'm not joking. So you got licensed in Connecticut. You can't practice in New York State. It's against the law. I would immediately got rid of all those. I would have got rid of all of those. And I would have begged people, come to my city. I have the largest, most densest city literally in the country. Please come to my city. We're going to need you. So let them come and let more people work. I talked about all of this. Again, this was March of 2020. It's on video. That's how you begin to turn this state around. But I'm still not done. Now, because COVID's real. So I had a real plan for it. It wasn't like, get government out. It was a real plan. On top of that, you now use the New York website to be a repository for information. And I don't say, here is the rules on masks and vaccines and mandates you must do. Nope. Instead, I say, here is the guidelines that I have. And I'm open and honest. And I say, I don't know if it's the right answer or not. I'm not sure. But here's what I know. In fact, here's what others know. And another one. Right now they have it. It's called the Well Safety Group or something like that. The Well Safety Seal. I talked about this literally a year and a half ago. It's a private organization that they decide what is right and wrong in the guidelines. So you get government rules and you get the private company rules, both of them. And now I send out my inspectors, not to fine you, but if you follow the government rules, you get a government stamp. If you don't follow the government rules, you don't get fined. You just don't get a government stamp. So I don't have to close you. I don't have to hammer you. I just give you a stamp or not. And the community decides if they trust you or not. And the Well Safety Seal, they'll put out their stamp too if they want. Maybe people want both stamps. Maybe they want one or the other. I only demand one thing. I do demand one thing. transparency. I need all the counties to give me all the data as soon as they can, what's going on. This way, everyone could know exactly what's happening in every county. You can create your own world for how to work and function in your own county. They told us COVID's a war and we can't surrender. Then they told us to go home and surrender. I was a Marine for 7 years, as I told you, back in the 80s. We were worried about the Soviet Union. They taught us that if there's a chemical attack or a nuclear attack or whatever that is, you have to be able to function in every environment. The war doesn't end because it's a contaminated battlefield. So we have to figure out how to function in our society without just surrendering in a contaminated battlefield, whatever that might be. And I think we could have figured the entire thing out in 6 months. I think that if I had known in January, by July of 2020, we knew exactly how to function in this environment. We would have far less deaths, far less shutdowns, because it'd be voluntary shutdowns only, right? We'd know what actually works in every county. You can't have the same rules in New York City as you have in Wyoming County, New York. They're just two different counties. You just can't. I mean, Hamilton County has like 5,000 people in it, and Queens has 2.1 million. You simply can't have the same rules in each of those. So yes, you do all of that and you watch things change tremendously. You never have to lock anybody down. You have to force anybody, and instead have a real conversation about how we can make this state work.
What was your initial reaction when you first heard Cuomo at a press conference answer a reporter who said, does the government have a responsibility if they're telling me I can't work to get me money when I need it? When he said, then go get a job as an essential worker, you won't kill it.
I remember
what was your guttural reaction to that?
That was my whole point.
That was the moment at which I almost broke a monitor in my apartment listening to that.
This is when I was going, yes, this is exactly him. That's exactly him. Go get a job. Go work. Go do this. I'm the law. I'm the law is what he was basically saying. Of course,
that's I typically tend to hear that from Republicans. The whole idea of, well, if you're broke, just get a job. But particularly hearing from someone who's more left to say, oh, did we just shut down your company? Get a job in an entirely different industry that you're not trained for within the next 1 or 2 weeks was that was a bit much even for me.
It was horrible how bad and cruel he was, right? The idea that, again, if you have to shut down, I'm not a fan of shutdowns at all. But if we knew that the world was going to end, I came with a plan for that too. And that plan, believe it or not, is more radical, but I think would have worked a whole lot better. Excuse me. I call that my 3-half plan. This one probably had to be done at a federal level. I don't think it could have been done at a state level. It had to be a federal level. What we did was we basically did a bunch of shutdowns. People had to stay home. We changed culture. There were tons of people who now don't want to go back to work, can't go back to work, have changed their whole mind. I mean, everything. We changed the culture of America. We're going to look back at this years from now and realize that the COVID lockdowns was another step towards our country's decline. It was a watershed. It changed who we were, right? It just changed who we were. The damage that has been done to our children, the damage that's been done to businesses, the amount of the wealth gap has just gotten huger. Rental society, I mean, ownership just destroyed. It was horrible. What I would have done is in a 3-half plan, and this is radical. Of all things I've said, this one's radical, and I think would have had to been at the federal level. The first thing you do is you tell all financial institutions in the United States, all of them, you may not demand payment for anything for 6 months. Not for a credit card, not for a mortgage, not for a loan, not for insurance. You may not demand anything for 6 months. You just may not demand it at all. Now, if you want to pay, you can pay, whatever, may not demand anything. They go, oh my God, I'm going to walk down this road. Nothing here is simple. That's the first piece, right? Second, that's the first half a year. The second thing is, for half a year, all rents may be half. So if you want to pay half your rent, you can pay half your rent if you want to. Up to you. You can pay half your rent, no matter what the agreement is. The federal government basically just becomes dictatorship. We did already. And it says you may pay half if you want to, and there'll be no criminal charges, no charges whatsoever. You may pay half. We've already done the you don't get to pay at all. I'm just saying you can pay up to half if you want to. If you're doing well, pay your rent. If you want to pay, I'd pay half. You're going to say, Larry, how the hell are these landlords going to survive on half rent? They don't have to pay their mortgages on the buildings. They don't have to pay insurance. They can
you're doing
survive.
A universal pause rather than a half pause. Because what we
Thank
did was a half
you.
pause where the tenants didn't have to pay their rent, but the landlord had to pay their mortgage, and that's what caused a lot of the issues. So you would address it
Thank you.
at the top of the level rather than just at
Yes.
the base level.
Of course, Stuart yells, who paid for the other half? Like I wouldn't have that answer, Stuart. How about give me a couple minutes, wise guy? Give me a couple minutes. So
I love the way
I'm
you respond to YouTube chat.
because they always do
You
this.
treat them as
They
what they
always
are.
they always jump right on it. Well, you did your first three sentences didn't solve every problem. Yeah, like you had an answer. You never an answer, Stuart. You had no answer. Neither any of the people other people have any answer. So I got it. Anyway, my
I would have
point is
voted for you based on how you talk to YouTube chat, in spite of even if you had Andrew Cuomo's policies.
there we go. Yes.
I should edit that out of
So,
this one.
so my point is now you can survive, and that's my point. You're as a landlord, you can survive. It isn't great, but it's survivable, and you know it's 6 months. I can survive as a landlord on half rent for 6 months because I'm not paying my mortgage on my stuff. I got to pay still maintenance and stuff, but I can survive on that. Okay, good. Now, every employer may pay half salary. Larry, how are you going to survive on half salary? You're not paying your credit card bills and your rent's halved. And if you get a mortgage, you ain't paying it. You can survive on half salary for 6 months. Now, why would you want to do that? For the most important reason, it keeps people working. It doesn't change the culture of America. It keeps you in your house. It keeps you at your job. It keeps your business open. It allows us to survive and rethink how to function in this new environment. That's what it would have done. All the people who lost where they were living, lost their homes, lost their jobs, lost their businesses. No, they would have actually had a chance to survive. And that's only if we would have had to lock down. I'm not sure we would have had to lock down. I'm not sure we would have had to. But if we thought so, then that's the answer.
The lockdown definitely changed a lot of my view of politics because there were a lot of issues that I had there. And what I've noticed is that there are so many issues where there's so many areas where I can fundamentally disagree with a politician, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, are you going to issue a mandate like for where you have cops that are turning their sirens on because someone is jogging down a street with a mask, like what happened in Rhode Island? Are you going to issue a mandate that I owe all of the money that I owe to everybody, but I'm not allowed to do business? And what I've noticed, and in terms of reordering my priorities, looking forward in terms of where I go, where I move, who I vote for, that's pretty much gone to the top. If you were someone who said this aisle, you can walk down this aisle of the store, but not this aisle of the store, I can't mess with you anymore. And it really did rearrange my political priorities a lot over the course of the last year and a half, just seeing that. I actually have a particularly fun conversation I get to have in 13 hours with my current landlord about my $92,000 back balance as a result of the last year and a half. Now, one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you, and I don't know how you would address this as a governor or if this is even something you can address as a governor. It's something I've gone over in many of these videos, is the real estate situation in New York City. I got my first store in 2012 and my second store in 2020. A lot of the places that I went shopping for in 2011 when I was looking for my first store are still vacant. So, and many of them were never rented. Now, a lot of people would say when I do these real estate videos and I show all the empty places throughout the city that I'm picking on the city because of COVID, which again, a lot of that was self-inflicted due to the shutdowns. But even if you didn't have COVID, you had a lot of the city that was vacant because they want $30,000, $40,000, $80,000 a month for a place that's a total shitbox. And there are people that will say that the free market has failed there with how commercial mortgage-backed securities work. You are using the building itself as leverage to purchase the building. If you rent that space out to someone for less money, then you would owe out of your pocket to pay for it. So you're incentivized to keep it empty.
Your whole banking agreement, your loan agreement goes to hell if you don't rent for the right amount. Exactly. Yeah.
How do you fix that? Because so much of what made the city a cultural center, so many of the places that I like, places that I went to view live music at, the place I had my first good date at with a woman, all these places are now gone, and I don't see them coming back. And every now and then I'll call these places up just to do a video, and I'll show up and see, okay, are they willing to rent it out for a normal price? And you'll see a place that's the size of my store going for $75,000. How do you address and fix this? Or is there a way to address and fix that as a governor or as a mayor with city policies? And how would you have gone about dealing with this if you were elected in 2018?
There's the first thing is you have to talk about it. And that sounds crazy. But that's the first thing. The vast majority of New Yorkers, and I would see it when I go to events, would just think the reason why the landlords aren't renting is because they're greedy. The vast majority think it's just greedy. They don't understand that their loan agreement is trashed if they go to a certain level to where they may actually lose their entire building. So they're better off keeping some of their people in and leaving their stores empty than losing the entire building. And you brought it up with the loan systems. So the whole system has to be just talked about. First, they understand that it's not just, don't get me wrong, some landlords are greedy. I'm not saying landlords are awesome. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is people think it's only because of that. They don't understand a structure is in place that trashes it. Bankers really have set us up to fail. The number one reason why we have this wealth gap is not because of policies that, about whether you're going to tax the rich or whatever is the policy. It's bankers. Bankers are the number one reason why the wealth gap is so bad, without question. But first step is to talk about it, number one. The second, if you're going to do things like somehow we can just forgive debt and forgive this, if you're going to forgive all these things, then have a very simple rule. Look at what's happening. You now get to renegotiate. That's it. You talk as the governor. You get to renegotiate. But the bankers go, you can't renegotiate. We have a contract. I know, but I'm not going to support you in court. So you get to renegotiate. Renegotiate so this guy can survive, so people can do stuff. Absolutely.
What do you mean I'm not going to support you in court? I'm sorry, I lost you there, and I just don't want to make sure that
what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you got some smart people. Mobility Project brings up Glass-Steagall Act. Worst thing we could have done getting rid of that. He's totally correct. Well done, Mobility Project. Anyway, what I mean is right now, the governor is going to support the financial institutions. Almost all governors do. So if someone actually were to say, you've got to help me out, you've got to let me renegotiate these so that I can have, without losing my building, I can actually have lower rents. The governor now will just go, whatever. But student loans, let's forgive all student loans. I'm saying, let's work on student loans too and renegotiate this, because student loans is another banker grift, right? And so these loans for these buildings, it's a banker grift. So instead say, you know what? Let's not allow the bankers to grift. So let's renegotiate. And it's literally me just saying, you can renegotiate. I'm going to put pressure on everyone around you. I'm going to talk all about it until you just accept, you know what? We're renegotiating. It's fine. The bankers aren't going to go under. They're not. They're going to be fine.
But how would that work? Let's say you say that you would not support the banker when that gets to court. So let's say that I own my building and I renegotiate my lease with my tenant, Ross and Repair Group. So instead of being $12,500 a month with $92,000 in back rent owed, it's something more favorable.
I don't mean that. I mean the guy who owns your building. He is now about to lose his building.
Yeah, he would lose his building if he renegotiates my lease with me, because then that would lower the value of his building, and that he's using the value of his building as collateral for his loan. So when the bank takes it into court and says, okay, we're going to take back your building, how would the governor get...
I am literally going to show up. I'm not joking. I'm literally going to show up at your court proceedings with cameras and say, this is what's happening. This is the reason why. This is the reason why. Look at this. This is the reason why.
So this wouldn't be so much a legal thing as it is a social and societal shaming.
Correct. Absolutely. What we don't use the governor's bully pulpit the way we should at all. It should be used far more. Right? The problem that I have here is if you're supposedly a leader, that's what they say they are, right? There are leaders. They say they are. If there are leaders, how come they can't seem to influence anybody? Then influence people. Then get people to do what you want voluntarily. If the idea is good, people should agree with it. If I'm wrong, then they shouldn't. I'm okay with that.
What about the argument that some people just should lose their building? I mean, I can't afford to buy a building in New York City. So if I manage to get some ridiculous agreement where I claim that Starbucks is going to lease my store for $100,000 and I lease it, that I probably should lose my building if I buy a building that I can't afford. What would be your argument there? With regards?
The question is it, and this is hard. This is a very hard position to have in general. And I'm just being very clear on this. When the entire environment tells you you should do something, most humans will respond to that environment. Can you blame humans for responding to a bad environment? I guess you have to, but man, it's harsh. If everyone around you's doing it and you're doing it too, and you're the only one who gets caught, if everyone's doing it and it's legal and everyone's doing it, but you don't get caught, it feels bad. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't think it's black and white. I mean, I think we can have some sympathy for someone who thought, I could do it too, right? Everyone else is. And the reality of it is, if you're permanent capital and you have 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 units, if you get caught losing one of the units, so what? You'll be fine. Well, this is your only building. You're finished. What if you only have 2 units? It's your house. You have 2 units and you get caught. You're finished. It's unfair. It's just bad. And yeah, it's a tough spot. I'm being forward. You're right. It's a tough spot, but it's still bad. I can still be human and say it's wrong. It's just bad. Would I want to put them in jail? No. But would I feel bad? I would, because almost always, you know this, it's almost always the little guy. That's not 100% rule. Sometimes big guys get hammered and good for them. But many times, the big guy gets away with it and takes a little hit and the little guy goes under. I hope that made sense. I'm sorry. It's just some things aren't black and white. I think we have a system that is set to hurt the little guy. And sometimes, you can say they should know better. But what can you expect sometimes? It's tough.
A lot of people in the chat are having level of skepticism that societal shaming is going to work on a representative of JP Morgan Chase. And I kind of, yeah.
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah. That's true. Yes, you're right. If it's a big permanent capital company like that, that's different. You're right. If it's you're right. In that case, you have to stand up to them directly. Absolutely. Just step in. You have to step in. You'd have to step in with some type of either mandate or executive order, or you'd have to step in if it's something that big. Yes, if it's a big company, you'd have to.
Because people have been saying that what they should do is they should tax the vacant spaces, because if you tax the vacant spaces, they have an incentive to rent. But there is that fundamental counter incentive, which is I would just lose my building and be bankrupted entirely. So I'd rather slowly bleed out than bleed out all immediately. And I think that COVID just kind of accelerated what had already been going on for over 10 years, which was the emptying out of the city.
Yep. Absolutely. No, I understand what you're saying, and it's not easy. I'm with you. It isn't an easy answer when it comes to dealing with huge companies that spend lots of money. The only way that you could do it is you make a counter agreement. And I'll give you an idea. This may not make sense specifically for this one, but maybe something like, look, JP Morgan Chase, or insert big bank here, whatever the bankings are. Banks love 2 things more than anything else. 1, guaranteed government money. 2, transaction fees. Man, do they love those 2 things more than anything. They love transaction fees. So maybe you have to find some way of allowing them to have transaction fees in some way, shape, or form to allow all renegotiation for all of their loan agreements. It's something like that might have to happen. And that's not the perfect answer. I'm agreeing with you, but it's a crappy system that is punishing the little guy, and we have to find that answer. And if I had to make that kind of deal, to be fair with you, I probably would. To save the little guy, I probably would.
That makes sense. Now, when it comes to the gubernatorial race, you were the Libertarian candidate, and there were other people that looked like they had interest in it. When it came to the mayoral race that happened 1 year sooner, the mayoral candidate for the Libertarian Party was a gentleman named Andrew Cuomo. He had spent, I believe, 15 years in a mental institution because he had tried to hijack an airplane. Okay, that was close. He tried to hijack an airplane, and then he got out. And the immediate thing that happened was he ran for the Libertarian candidate for mayor. Mm-hmm. Is there nobody else that wanted to do that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. What you have to understand when it comes to running for office, several things that are true. The first thing I mentioned, it's a rich man's game or it's an establishment man's game. So you got to find someone who's either wealthy or established. Well, libertarians, there aren't any in New York State that are established. So that's not going to happen. So you got to find somebody who's wealthy. If you're wealthy, why would you run libertarian? Right? So it's hard to find someone. That's number one. It is difficult to find someone. Second, they throw us off the ballot all the time. They literally sue to throw us off the ballot. The deck is stacked against us. who wants to do this. Yeah, it's really hard to find somebody to run. It is. But I don't mind. I supported Aaron. I don't care. I support him completely. The government screwed him over also. For those who don't know his story, he actually was mentally ill. He was convicted of nothing. He was charged with nothing. The problem is they knew he was mentally ill, and he admitted it. He will tell you if you ask him, he was mentally ill. But they said he was okay and cured within 5 years. But it was right after 9/11, and everybody was terrorist. And they kept him in federal prison 10 years after he was deemed okay by all of his doctors. That's the government being security theater. And to be forward, so those of you who don't know the story, he wasn't hijacking the plane. I'm just being clear on who he is. He wasn't hijacking the plane to hurt people. He actually believed that there was a cabal, a worldwide cabal, trying to hurt the world. And he was going to take the plane to go get them. That's what he believed. And again, that's on the record. I'm not making this up. It's on the record. He believed that. He believed that he was doing something great. That's what he believed. Just saying. That's all.
I hear you.
But yes, to answer your question, absolutely. It's really hard to find people to run. It is really hard. I'll ask you, would you decide you're going to run for mayor or something? Are you going to take it up as a full-time job, not work, not make any money for a year and a half, and the odds of your victory are tiny? Would you? Probably not. Most people
I wouldn't
wouldn't.
run because I don't want my life to become miserable and have millions of people have an incentive structure to dig up every little thing that I've ever said or done that's wrong because they don't like the idea of somebody else having power over them. I would never do it. People have asked about it, and I have zero interest, which is why I respect people like you and Aaron that are actually willing and open to do it to some extent. Now, someone said earlier,
yes, I think yes.
Sorry about that. With your comment on landlords and being being open to the idea of a bailout or government intervention in spite of being a libertarian. To me, it sounds like you are libertarian leaning, but you are not an ideologue. How would you describe your political views in general?
No, I'm absolutely libertarian. 100% libertarian. The people get confused. They think every libertarian is an anarcho-capitalist or an anarchist. There are many anarchists in our party and many anarcho-capitalists in our party. Many of them. And I love them. I want them in my party. Doesn't mean every libertarian's that, right? And the point is, do I want to, every one of my plans, if any of you care, you can go to LarrySharpe.com. All of my policies are there. None of my policies, and I mean none of them, increase taxes or include force. They don't. They don't. So would I consider some intervention here or there? I would in a dire situation. I would, because that's the world we live in. Would I love to have an entirely voluntary society? 100%. I would love that. I would absolutely love to have a completely, totally voluntary society. We're not there. We're no one near there. And I would like to have people be happy in New York State. New York State, and I'm going to give a quick pitch for New York State, a couple seconds. New York State is a wonderful, beautiful, diverse state. It's an amazing state with everything you could ever want in it. From skiing to beaches, to the largest city in the country, to amazing farmland, whatever it is an amazing state. Its government is garbage and is destroying and is so oppressive that is literally breaking up families. That's how bad our government is. I want happy New Yorkers. And I am a libertarian.
I got to push back a little. When you say breaking up families, how is the New York State government doing that?
Sure. Think of all the people you know whose parents retired outside of this state.
Mine did. Mine
Thank you.
Retired to Brookfield,
Broke your family up. Broke your family up.
I miss being able to visit my dad, but he hated it here.
Thank you. Broke your family up. That's what I mean. Yes. How many parents, kid graduates from college, leaves, doesn't come back? Yes. This state is so oppressive. You can't find a job here or you can't retire here. That's why. That's what I mean. Your own family. Mine too. My mother died in South Carolina because she can retire here. That's what I mean. So oppressive, it literally breaks up families. And don't even get me started on our broken family, our family law here. Our family law here is so insanely bad. It's literally crushing families like there's no tomorrow. Absolutely.
Can you explain that? Because I don't understand that part.
The family law system in New York State has many problems. And across the country it does, but New York State's extra bad. Again, another grift. For those of you who don't know, When you give out any type of money, like any kind of alimony or support payments, they go through New York State. New York State takes a cut, like a credit card company. So New York State makes money on you paying your spouse or your former spouse or your kid. New York State makes you pay for your kid till they're 21 or 22, even though they're adult at 18. Now, if you weren't divorced, you wouldn't have to pay for your kid if you don't want to once they're 18. I mean, I hope you would. I hope you care about your kid. I hope you would. But you wouldn't go to jail if you didn't. You will in New York State if you don't pay for your kid till they're 21, 22. It's forced, whatever they say. Not just that. They look at you and say, let's see, Lewis, how much did you make? You made whatever, $100,000 in a year? Awesome. That's great. We're gonna take your pay and make your expenses you have to pay for that for the rest of your life. What, you lose your job? Too bad. Your job goes away. Too bad. You still have to pay that no matter what. Too bad, no matter what. It doesn't matter. Oh, get 2 jobs. So now you'll never see your kid. Okay, you never see your kid. And we wonder why we have so many people who are sitting out there without parents. What are our prisons filled with? Fatherless kids. Half of that is done because they keep getting trashed in our damn. I'm exaggerating half. A bunch of those are done because of the horrible things that are happening in our family court system. If you lie in family court, literally, if you lie, it's not considered perjury. It's not considered perjury. So that's correct. And if you make any of you think I'm making this up, if any of you think I am, do your own homework. It's absolutely true. Literally, if I go into court and say my ex-wife slept with all my friends, she's horrible and she's a drug addict, I can do that all I want, and it's not considered perjury. Now, most people don't know this. The lawyers know this, so they encourage people to lie. I'm not making this again. If you think I'm wrong, say it. It's absolutely true. And so they wind up lying. So what happens is the person who lies the most is the one who does the best in family court. So whoever lies first and hardest is usually the person who does the best. So if you're honest and trying to do the right thing by you and your kids, you get screwed. Happens all the time. Family court is a disaster, and everybody makes money. The court system makes money. The judges make money. The system makes money. Everybody makes money. Tons of make money, except for the families. They don't. It is horrible. And no due process. None. Literally, you could, if you get divorced, I don't know if you're married, but for the sake of argument, you're married, you get divorced. And you and your wife both shop in a similar area because you were married before as you're getting divorced. She comes into court. She does not, you're not there. She comes in. She says she feels unsafe. The judge will put a order of protection against you. You weren't there. You don't even know it was done. No due process, no evidence required. You guys happen to be shopping at Walmart together. She calls the cops. You're going to jail. That happens all the time. You're going to jail. So now, and you know what's the worst part? Your kids are probably there. So now your kids get to actually watch their dad take a perp walk. Take a perp walk. How does your son feel when he sees his dad take a perp walk? How does your daughter feel about men when she watches you take a perp walk? So now you're taking a perp walk, you go to jail. You might even lose your job. And guess what happens? When you find out later that she was lying, you know what happens to her? Nothing. Not a thing, because it's not perjury. Nothing happens. That happens all the time. And if you think I'm making it up, do your homework. Happens all. The amount of people, again, I cross this state every single year. I go to all 62 counties in this glorious state every year. And every time I go to these events, I meet people who tell me the same story again and again and again. This is how it actually works.
What? Wow. Yeah, that reminds me of why I'm not married. Okay, that's freaky. One of the things that you had mentioned is that we have a very bloated budget, and that we have a similar population of Florida, a little bit younger than Florida, but similar population, but we spend twice as much money. What do you get? How much of that is corruption, and how much of that is us providing superior services in some way to Florida? What do you get for the double the budget?
You get a feeling of safety. I'm not joking. What you get? A feeling of safety. For example, Sarah says none of that is true or common. Sarah, you are completely incorrect. But that's okay. A lot of people believe that. I didn't think so either. I thought that was not true. I believe, but she's completely wrong. It's fine. What you get is the idea of safety. For example, New York State's one of the only states where you actually have an insurance board. An insurance board. You don't have that in the state. That's a whole lot of money, a whole lot of energy, and a whole lot of companies spending a bunch of money for nothing. We're one of the only states or there's only, I think, 7 states where you have to get workers' comp for both on the job and off the job. That's because of insurance board. You get that. You get tons of commissions, lots and lots of commissions, tons of commissions, lots of them, which don't actually do anything. You have a economic development corporation in every county. You have an Empire Economic Development Corporation, which does nothing but take money and throw it in the garbage. You have an insanely bloated Medicare system, an insanely bloated education system, tons and tons of government workers. You have lots and lots of government workers. That's what you kind of get for all the money. Tons of government workers, bloated everything, lots of insurance. You get a feeling of safety and security. I think some people feel that way. That's about it.
I have gone over this idea called right to repair on this channel, which is that you should be able to fix the things that you own. And I've advocated for government legislation. And there are libertarians out there that have said, why don't you advocate for getting rid of the intellectual property laws that make it illegal for me to share a schematic on this YouTube channel, illegal for me to have Intersil just make me a copy of a chip that they made for Apple or somebody else make a copy of the chip that they made for them. What do you think of the concept of right to repair as it currently exists? What would you have done if that type of law were pushed to the governor's office? Is that something where in its current form you would veto it? And if so, what would you suggest?
I have a very simple answer. I agree with you. Right to repair, very simple answer. Do you own it or do you rent it? That's it. You make that a very clear distinction. Do you own it or do you rent it? That's it. If you own it, you can repair it. If they don't want you repairing it, then they need to let you only rent it. You just lease it. That's it. So, for example, I have a tractor as an example, right? And I got my tractor. I'm a farmer in upstate New York, and my tractor has a cool GPS system on it, whatever. GPS system breaks down. If I buy the tractor, then I own the GPS system. You don't want me owning the GPS system? Then I must lease the tractor. Tractor breaks down, give me a new one. Grossly simple. If you own it, you can repair it. If you don't own it, then you can rent it. That's your choice. If they don't want to give you the system when you buy it, then they shouldn't give you the system when you buy it. That's it.
So what would the consequence be to a company if they claim that you own it and that you are purchasing it, but then they hold from you everything that you would need through private exclusivity agreements so that you wouldn't be able to purchase any of what's actually necessary to maintain it? Would that
then you wouldn't buy that, would you? But then you wouldn't buy it, then would you? You'd either
Every
lease
company
it.
does that, which is at the point, and that's the issue at this point in time, that for certain industries and certain devices, you would have to choose at this point in time to not go without a cell phone or purchase a cell phone from a company that when you hit the camera button, it takes 30 seconds for it to turn on and half of the time randomly reboots. I was one of the early users of a Pine phone. So you're at a point where you don't have an actual choice. Would that be that the company is then forced to market the device as a rental and not an ownership kind of thing?
That's my point. Yes. If the company is saying they want to charge you $1,000 for a phone and you're going to buy the phone for $1,000, then you own the phone. You own the phone. If the company says, well, I don't want you to own this stuff, great. Then you rent the phone and then I don't own it. I rent it. I'm not paying $1,000 to rent the phone every month. No one's going to be
allowed to advertise it as ownership at that point.
That's correct, because you can't own it. You're not owning it. It's grossly simple. If I buy it, I own it, and then I get to repair it, and it's mine, or rent it to me. Well, I don't like the rental situation. Well, then I guess you don't make a phone then, do you? Somehow people are going to buy phones. People are going to buy phones. I really think you have to do that. You have to find a way I don't want to end all IP. To be very clear, many libertarians want to end all IP. I don't. What I want to do is I do think IP is completely overblown and it's totally broken. For those of you who don't know, originally what intellectual property was supposed to be about, it's not this now. I'm telling you what it was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about, hold on, somebody quoted me, says, your son moves away, so now your family's broken. No, knucklehead, your son moves away because there's no opportunity in this state. He doesn't want to move away. He has no choice, because since 2008, there's been literally no recovery except in 20 cities. 80% of all new jobs in 2008 have come since 28 have come in 20 cities. 80% of all new jobs in 2008 have come out of 20 cities. So kids move away because no opportunity, not because they want to. Yes, when you move away because of necessity, yes, that's breaking up your family. Yeah, that's how it works. Sorry, I had to cover this guy real fast. But
By all means.
where was I with my other thing I was hooping and hollering about? I'm always hooping and hollering about something. In any case, where was I now? So I got mad at that guy.
I gotta rewind and see.
Oh yes. Right to repair. Sorry.
Intellectual property. You said you would
Yes.
not abolish intellectual
Yes.
property, but that it has gotten a little too entangled, and I agree.
It's got
I've
way out. Right now, it was initially made, believe it or not, to protect the consumer. It was supposed to be that intellectual property was so that the consumer wouldn't confuse one for another. That was the origin. It wasn't to protect the company's rights. It was originally made to protect me, right? If I go out and someone's, trying to look like Pepsi, but they're not Pepsi. So that was the issue. That makes sense. That was the original issue. It's completely not that anymore. It's just nowhere near that. Now it's I protect the individual person, and that's what it's all about. And I'm not against that concept. I think you do want to assist people and help creators. I think you do. I just don't think you want the way it is now. It's something like, I forgot the number, but it's something like, 70 years after the death of the creator or some number like that. It's something crazy like that. That's insane. If you create something, you give the person some benefit for creation. Maybe it's 3 years that he gets to keep it or she gets to keep it. Okay, that's fine. Something like that. But you don't let them keep it for the rest of their lives and I'm not joking, years after their death. I remember there was an IP attorney once who was talking to me, and she said, Larry, you don't understand. The intellectual property laws now, we had to shift it and move it, right? We have to shift it and move it to follow international law. So now it's 70 or whatever, make a number up. It's 70 years after the death of the author. And I said, wow, that's a bad law. She said, oh, no. You gotta understand. That's the law. No, I know it's a law. It's a crappy law. So no one else can have this for 7 years if the person dies? Terrible idea. So short time, keep it. No worries.
Let's get to a Q&A from some of the people here.
I love it. I love Q&A. It's my favorite part.
Worthwhile questions. All right, pick a
favorite part.
People ask questions, and let's pick out the good ones. Okay, so what says, because I called them out for straw manning what you said. You were talking about people leaving for no opportunity. What if the market, even a free one, doesn't have enough jobs in an area? Does the government need to step in?
I didn't say the government needs to step in. He just made that up. He's straw manning bullshit.
But
the idea is the government right now is actually so oppressive. That's what it is. You have property taxes where people can't, rents are so high. You have a system that allows for people to not be able to start their own businesses. You have oppressive taxes at the state level so that businesses don't want to be started. So the government is involved, and that's why it's so hard. I would say pull back and let there be more of a freer market. If a kid chooses to leave because it's a great opportunity someplace, but there's lots around here too, that's great. That's not what's happening. What's happening is people are actually going, I got nothing here. If you don't live in a city right now, unless you're lucky, and there are some people who are lucky and have great opportunities, good for them. But most people who are just graduate high school or college go back home and go, I can either work for the one big thing in my town, which is maybe a prison or a university or the Walmart or whatever, or I can work for some franchise, whatever, like I can work for the McDonald's or the local maid system or the Jiffy Lube, if there's still Jiffy Lube, whatever the franchise is, or I can work for the government. Those are my three choices. If I don't want those three, I guess I'm moving. That's oppressive, and that's breaking up families.
Someone asked what you would do about the public housing situation in New York City. And recently there was, I believe, this piece of legislation, 146C. Now, what do you think of the homeless situation in New York? I went over this recently where there was a charity that actually was founded by Cuomo a while back, a charity, where they bill the city around $3,500 to $4,000 per month per homeless person. There were several journalists that went inside these places and showed that they look like they look like a motel that I would think $5 a night is overpriced at. And they had proposed a piece of legislation that would allow city money to, instead of going through these corrupt homeless shelters, to then be utilized to give these people permanent housing and apartments by raising the cap on what is allowed for these vouchers. I believe it's called 146C. How would you have dealt with the homeless problem in New York City? And further, how would you deal with the fact that housing in the city is insanely expensive, that rents have gotten so high?
There's several pieces you want to work on. Again, this is not a one piece. There's several pieces. Piece number one, you want to allow people in public housing to have the option to buy their apartment, to buy their house. We don't have that. They did it in London for a while. It was relatively successful. I think you can make it even better here after learning what they did well and what they did badly. So without question, you do want to allow them to do that. And I know people get mad at me. They go, well, Larry, many of them are on public assistance. We're just letting them buy their house. Well, the other option is we pay their rent forever. I'd rather not pay your rent forever. The first thing you do is allow people to rent to own if they want to, right? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Many will. Why? Because once they start having ownership, then they'll start changing how they think, right? It's a critical aspect, number one. Number two, gentrification. Gentrification's only bad if you're a renter. If you're an owner, gentrification's awesome. In fact, if you're an owner, you control gentrification. You decide if you want to move or stay or whatever. So it also helps that. So one aspect is start doing that. But I'm not done with that. Once you're doing that, there's a system right now in, I think it's the Bronx, called Jericho Project, and where you actually have a nonprofit builds out a building. I would actually, like, again, people are going to think I'm crazy with this. I want large corporations to pay more for our community, but I don't want to force them. So I want to find an environment to where they want to do this. I want corporations to spend lots of money on us. I would like them to do so, but without forcing them. So guess what? I will allow them to sponsor a new set of affordable housing, of housing like that, right? Again, allowing people to buy. As they buy, the corporation gets paid back, but it becomes whatever until everything's done. It becomes the whatever McDonald's housing or something. I know it sounds horrible, but the other option is we have the problem that we have now. We start doing this. Now we have this house, that house, the other house, and people start buying it. They make their money back. What happens? You start rotating through affordable housing by default, and there's no extra taxpayer dollars. People start having ownership. It starts to work. And what we found in both Singapore and in London, when you do this, it actually winds up mixing people voluntarily. And they begin mixing socioeconomic status voluntarily. But that isn't the end of it. The next thing is you have to allow for tiny houses, right? We don't do that in New York State well at all. You want to allow for tiny houses. The problem is once someone is homeless, if I worked with a homeless population in the past, and many of them sadly are veterans, once someone becomes homeless at a certain point, they kind of don't know how to not be homeless, if that makes any sense. It becomes part of their culture. And they actually feel safer on the street, whether they actually are or not, than they feel in a shelter. So it doesn't really work. So instead, allow for tiny homes. Why? If you actually gave someone who was homeless a larger home, they would only move into one area only because it's what they've been doing for so long. So you give them a smaller home. And in that area, you make it similar to that Jericho Project piece where it is some of an apartment complex. There is security out front and there is help in the basement. I'm serious. There's help. There's people who deal with mental issues, addiction issues, finance issues. Remember, a lot of homeless people in New York City are actually working poor. So you want to also have houses for them also. So you want to have a working poor family housing also, which is different than the single vet house, is also different. You also can try to where when you do this, you also can rotate this through also. And that is every person pays 1/3 of their income, regardless of what their income is. If your income is zero, 1/3 is zero. You got $1,000, $300. It is 1/3 of your income is what you pay for rent. Why do you do that? Because you don't throw people out. They leave when they believe that they've made enough money that it's not worth it for them anymore, and they leave on their own. What winds up happening, we found, is that some people will stay and pay a higher rent because they love the community and they want to help others. And as more homeless or former homeless people start moving into this environment, those kind of senior people stay there and help them. and they wind up creating their own community and support structure. You wind up seeing people actually leave homelessness. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. This is a longer term solution, but one that can work, one that doesn't cost extra money, the privacy that can get involved, and that we can get people back on track. I want a way to get people back on track. I want people to be able to have a second chance. And right now, this isn't just traps you forever. That's what happens now. You're trapped forever. So this kind is a good style, right? So doing this, the next thing, there was a system that we shut down in New York City. It was mobile showers. I cannot tell you how important it is for when someone actually decides they want to get their life together. It's hard to do it when you haven't had a shower in 3 weeks or 3 months. Mobile showers are shut down because of, believe it or not, parking violations. I know. So instead, we allow the mobile shower groups to go around where someone who is homeless can literally come in, get some new clothes, take a shower, and maybe go home to their family and say, I'm ready to come back in, or maybe move into a tiny house, or maybe try to get a job or whatever, right? That's the issue. You really want to give a person a chance to feel like they're part of the world again. And many people who are homeless don't feel like they're part of the world.
When you say tiny houses, where would you put or build any? I get with the rest of the state, because this state is filled with low population density areas.
Yep,
In New
it
York
is.
City, there is where would you add to that? Because we have a lot of existing housing, existing condos, existing offices that are vacant. But when it comes to building residential housing, whether we're talking about apartment buildings or houses, there's no space left that I can see, unless I'm missing something, unless you're knocking down existing housing and replacing it with you knock down a house and you replace it with a high rise, or
Yep.
you get space that is not being used right now, whether it's office space, retail, or something else, and get people to live there. So when you say tiny house, can you explain what that means in the context of New York City or the 5 boroughs?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. You're right. That's also hard. This is not an easy thing to do whatsoever. It isn't easy. It's very hard to deal with this issue. I think now we have a big advantage, and that is, you said it, all that commercial space. Most of this commercial space is not coming back. You know this. Most of it's not.
I'm mentioning that to my landlord tomorrow.
Yes, but most of it's not coming back. I don't know. You might want to do that because he needs to make some money. Anyway, most people aren't coming back. You know that. I know that, right? Most of my clients that I deal with in my day job, many of them are either wealthy or at least well off. And if you're wealthy or well off in New York City, you usually have 2 homes, one in New York City and one someplace else, right? Wherever, maybe it's Jersey Shore, maybe it's Florida, maybe it's Connecticut, whatever. Many of them have gone to those secondary homes. They're not coming back. They've been making money for 1.5 years in a secondary home. They're not coming back. So I think you have now an option. You have a good option to take those commercial spaces and turn them into tiny homes. I think that will be the answer right now. They tend to have doormen. They have some kind of security. You really could do something like that. I think you could do that.
Interesting. Let's see, what other questions do we have here that showed up in chat? Good questions, not shit posts. Let's see.
You can do this shit post too. I don't mind. I get yelled at all the time. But these people don't realize is I've been doing this for literally 4 years, and I go out in person and meet people. People yell at me in person. So I deal with being yelled at in person.
Would you run in the next gubernatorial election?
I am considering it. I really am. I really am considering doing it again. So I'm gonna look at it. We'll see. I'm looking more than anything else for money.
I mean, they have idiots like me showing up in the Wall Street Journal, ABC News, and CBC now. So I'm confident that you'd be able to get traction with traditional media, but also the amount that traditional media has kind of gone down as independent.
No, you're not a threat to the establishment.
Some more coverage. I'm not, but I'm saying that you would get more coverage this time.
I'm a threat to the establishment. No.
You don't think so?
No. I have to buy it, right? As I said, I have to buy my time, right? I have to buy my time. There's no way that I could get time. I'm a threat to the establishment. Absolutely.
Interesting. Has your experience with I think that was a question for me. Instilled any confidence in letting corporations deal? This is for me. Has that your experience with corporations and the fight for right to repair instilled any confidence letting corporations deal with larger societal issues? Not with dealing with them, but I do have confidence that they are more than happy to give away money to Virtue Signal. And for instance, we were just
Yes.
talking about this in a prior video, that in Georgia and Louisiana, they were
Yes.
talking about setting up educational programs and putting millions and millions of dollars into it, so long as the right to repair bill doesn't get passed. So if they're willing to spend a bunch of money in fluff education programs that don't actually mean anything, I mean, if there was a way for them to, I don't know, pay for a bridge or housing and be able to
100%.
say that they're not evil, I think that they would do that. Not
Are
for
you telling me
just
Amazon,
for their own
I'm sorry,
self-interest.
you're telling me Amazon wouldn't love to say they're helping the homeless by building out a tiny houses section within an old commercial space or a mall or something? Anyone who thinks they wouldn't doesn't know what they do. They literally, large law firms literally have pro bono segments so they can just virtues it as if they care about anything. They're corporate lawyers, they're shark law firms that go out of their way to crush us, but then they do a couple pro bono things and say, see, we love the world. Absolutely, yes.
This is a good one from Daniel Smullen. Would Larry be in favor of stronger privacy laws at a state level, similar to CCPA in California, but which enshrine people's right to privacy and ownership of their data?
I do like the idea tremendously. I just don't know how you implement it. That's my issue. I haven't done enough homework on how to implement it.
But
I
do like
the idea
in software engineering and privacy, so I could see that being a major point for him.
If he's interested, and I'm serious when I say this, if I run, I'll need another guy on my policy team to cover that. I've already got people on my policy team for other things. My policy team will meet probably, if I do this, probably every Monday or so, every Tuesday, so I can go over and come up with policies for that. I don't have enough homework. I haven't done enough homework on that. I like the idea conceptually very much. I don't have enough homework on it though.
From here, let's see. What are your opinions on government subsidies for multinational corporations? I don't have any examples of any, but you may. And what would be your opinion?
There's tons of them, and they shouldn't exist at all. The problem we have, and this goes back to another issue, which is what many libertarians get mad at me about when I go here. And I look at it like a child, right? If I have a kid, he's 30, I've kept him in my basement, I've never made him work, I've ironed his clothes, washed his clothes, fed him, never made him pay rent, let him play video games all day, and then at 30 I go, get out. That's kind of my fault. Like, that's not fair. I haven't trained him at all. I've done nothing but treat him terribly. We've done a lot of that with a lot of people. So we're going to have to wean off some of this stuff. I know it sounds bad, but we have to do some weaning because it isn't fair when we've told them, yeah, we're going to support you forever. And then we're not. Like, do I like subsidies for companies? No, but there's always a part of the subsidies that go to small farmers or small companies or whatever. There's always a part of that, right? So like out of the subsidy, out of whatever, $100 million or $100 billion probably, $90 billion goes to big corporations, but $10 billion goes to small companies. If we trash it, the large companies will somehow survive. They'll get over it. And the small companies all go under. So we've got to find a way to wean the small companies off of the government teat. That's not an easy thing, but it needs to be done. But here's the issue. It has to be done. We have to start right away because it will take at least a couple of years to give the small guys a chance to survive without us spoon feeding them.
See what else we have here. Privacy question.
I see a gun violence one. Let me touch that one.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Gun violence. I'm a libertarian, so I'm 100% pro 2A. Gun violence is not about gun violence. Gun violence is about one thing and one thing only, the black market. That's what it's about. You can pass all the gun laws you want. New York City has some of the toughest gun laws in the United States, and people are shot every single weekend in this city, all the time. The issue is the black market. Why do people get shot? Street justice. That's what it is. Street justice. That's what it is. Why does some guy shoot someone in daylight? You know why, Lewis? Because you didn't agree to the contract we agreed to. You didn't actually do it the way I wanted to. So I'm going to I can't call the cops. I can't go to court. I can't sue you. So what I'm going to do? Street justice. And I'm doing it in the middle of the day so that you know I mean business. And so your friends don't try to screw me because they know I will shoot you even in the middle of the night and in the middle of the day. And we actually added something else here. The lockdowns. Who are the most violent people in our society? Always young men. Period. I know you may not like that. It may not be PC. It's true without question. Most of the violent people are young men, and most of them are young men looking for a purpose. Well, they're not in school, are they? And they can't get a job and work, can they? So they're literally sitting around with nothing to do, trying to be tough guys, trying to figure things out. And now here comes bad guy who says, hi, I'm Mr. Bad Guy. Hey, guys, want to be cool? I got a gun. Let's do stuff. And they don't use those exact words, but they do say that. How do I know? I came out of the ghetto. That's how it was done in 1975. That's how it's done in 2015. That's how it's done in 2021. Some guy says, hey, youngsters, come be cool. Let's go do bad stuff. And they have no goals. They have no hope. They have no purpose. And they go out and do violence. That's how it works every single time. End the black market. What does that mean? Let people go back to work. Let people sell in the regular market. Stop with all the licensing, create credentials. End the war on drugs. All of those things. There is no issue at all when it comes to the guns. It is violence. If we didn't have guns, they'd be stabbing people. How do I know that? That's what happens in New England. In England, in New England. In England, that's what happens in the UK. They just stab people. They use different reasons. They use different weapons, but they still do it. Absolutely. That's the issue.
If you run for New York governor, what can you do and what would you do to make concealed carry within New York City possible for existing permit holders from other counties in New York State?
Sadly, that is right now a bridge too far. Do I support it? I do, but I can't promise that. This state still believes that guns themselves are magically bad and kill people on their own and go on rampages. They still accept that as true, even though it is not true, but they do believe that. So what can we do? Here's what I tell you right away. The first thing we do is we create uniform laws for just transportation first. Some of you may not know this, but right now, if you take your legally purchased firearm and bring it to New York City, you are going to go to Rikers Island. No matter what, you may go, but I bought my gun legally. You are going to Rikers Island. You can literally follow every single TSA guideline. You are going to Rikers Island. That's how it works right now. That's how it works in our city. So what I would like to do is instead is just say universal transportation laws. What does that mean? If your firearm is legally owned, obviously, and it is unloaded and locked, you don't go to jail. In New York City, you still go to jail. So you don't go to jail. Just stop that. Number one, first step. I'm not done though. Second piece, I want to make it so that the definition of loaded changes. Right now, loaded in New York State means, I'm not making this up, means ammunition in the vicinity of the firearm. So literally the firearm's here, box of ammo on the table over here in New York State, that is a loaded weapon. Loaded. Change the definition. Very simple. Bullets in the gun. Loaded weapon. Done. Not just that. I want to make sure that in New York State, and this is county by county, that that New York State will not be a may issue permit, but shall issue permit. And if they don't issue the permit within 90 days, you automatically get it. If they deny you, they have to give you a reason why and an appeals process.
Many people are saying they'd rather be stabbed. Many people are saying I'd much rather be stabbed than shot, and you cannot mass murder with a knife. And one thing I want to interject, and admittedly this is a question for you, is most of the crimes you see with guns in New York, they're not mass shootings. It's not like the Vegas shooting or a school shooting. It's just one gang member.
Mass shootings don't happen. The only mass shootings that happen in New York State, you people don't know what you're talking about, in New York State, are gang violence. That's the only mass shootings you have in New York State. It's just gang violence. And the gang violence. I don't want you to be stabbed or shot. I would like you to not be neither. So what you're basically saying is, Larry, I don't mind people getting killed, just killed by knives. I'm fine with that. I want none. You're the bad person. If you think you're better because, well, knives are better. Knives suck too. I don't want anyone being stabbed or shot. You're not better than me because you'd rather get stabbed. You're just a self-righteous moron. No one should be stabbed or shot or hurt or anything. End the black market, and then people don't get shot in gang violence. Well, less. There'll always be some bad people, but that won't happen. You're not righteous because you'd rather me be hit by a baseball bat and have my skull crushed and have brain damage for the rest of my life. Now you're better
I
than
think
me?
their point, and I'm someone who does support who would support a open carry in New York City. His point is that it is more difficult for you to do it, and therefore it would be less likely for people to either be killed and less likely for more people to be killed if you're dealing with a knife rather than a gun.
The number one mass killing in the world, school mass killing, was in Nice, France. And you know what was used? A van. A van. He just waited until the kids lined up and he ran them over. New York City, biggest mass killing was a guy in a van who ran over bicyclists. That was in Manhattan. You remember that?
I do.
Yes, a couple years back.
Now we have all those. Now we have all those buoy things that try to protect you from the sidewalk.
So now what we did was we made the place less easy to get through with cars. We made it more difficult for everyone to have a good everyone to have a good time downtown because one idiot with a van ran people over.
What is the role of the government to protect the environment?
That's a vague, that's a broad question. It is the government's role to do that. I think it is. And what I wanted to do is create in New York State. What most people don't realize is the government does a very poor job of doing it. New York State has some of the worst sites in the entire world. I mean, we have a lot of, not country, not world, sorry, not world, country. We have a whole lot of terrible waste sites in New York State all over the place. And what people don't realize is the EPA has actually done a poor job in protecting us because the EPA was actually created and run by, and the rules are written by corporate lobbyists. So in reality, they spend a whole lot of time making sure nothing changes so that we actually don't have any chance of cleaning things up. What I mean by that, the rules, some of them were written in the 80s and the 90s and such. So if you had to clean up something, a site that would follow the EPA rules, regulations, you would literally have to like buy the equipment from like some warlord in Southeast Asia or in Africa or whatever, and get the equipment back and then try to fix it. It's unattainable. You can't do it. It's almost impossible. So they often don't. The sites just sit there and no one fixes them. Not just that, everything was supposed to go to what's called a super fund. And the super fund would then pay for everything, right? And that was supposed to happen. The super fund has no money in it because it's already been used up. So now nothing gets done. That's why so many sites just sit there forever and nothing gets done. So I want to make better changes. And in New York State, I want to create what's called the EVU. It's the Environmental Victims Unit. You might say, Larry, you're creating more government. Kind of, but not. What I mean by that is right now, most AGs literally have no idea how to prosecute someone who has polluted. They don't know how to do it. It's not their skill set. They've never done it. It's not the way of doing things. So they don't do a good job of it. So our DEC doesn't really do much in that regard. They point their finger and say, bad guy. And really that's about it. They maybe do things like, fine them a little bit and they don't pay and it's a disaster. But if you actually had an environmental victims unit, which you would use the same people, but they would actually be there and not be, and the people who you'd hire to be inspectors would be people who would know how to put a case together for a DA or for an AG. And they would also know how to pierce the corporate veil so that now the company isn't punished. I actually don't care if the company is punished. I care if the individuals who made the decisions are punished. If the individuals who made the decisions are actually punished, they won't make as many decisions like that anymore. Individuals need to be punished. The problem is right now, any time company pollutes, the crime isn't against the individual. The crime's against the state. So the state gets paid. It's another money grab. It takes its millions from that company. They pay each other off and life goes on. What happens to the actual individual is they get caught up in a class action lawsuit that will last who knows how many years. And at the end of those 7, 8, 10 years, they get $35 and the lawyers got paid millions. That's the norm. I would like to change that. Make an environmental victims unit to where the people who are actually affected by the polluters, we find an actual way of showing that they were affected. We can actually take this to the AG and or local DAs and prosecute the people, and then things would change. I think that's a critical piece. Second piece, though, before you build anything, I don't want it to just be federal guidelines. The federal guidelines are old federal guidelines and only change because corporate lobbyists decide to change them if they ever do. I would like both local people to have it and something else. I want insurance companies to be liable to pay for everything. What does that mean? If an insurance company has to pay for the entire cleanup, right now insurance companies only pay to a certain amount. The EP actually protects them. You only pay X, then this magical super fund pays the rest, which has the money in it. Hence, we have the site sitting there for 30 years. But I'm going to say no super fund. If you buy insurance, you got to pay for everything. Well, you're an insurance company. You're going to make sure these people do better. And they don't, you're writing big checks. So maybe the first time you screw up. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Larry. People are still going to get hurt. The system is that way right now. I think that if we then eventually go to this system, 1 or 2 or 3 years, things will change tremendously. Will change everything. Somebody brought up nuclear. I am all about nuclear. That person is correct. You are right. Gen 4 nuclear is the future. It should be the future. Absolutely. If I run for governor, we should build 3 Gen 4 nuclear power plants in North Country in New York with 3 separate overlapping grids. So we're protected from cyber attack. If they have to get all 3 grids versus 1, and they can overlap, and we can even sell the extra energy to create a New York State sovereign fund to pay for education, lowering property
tax.
One
of the comments that I expected was that nuclear is dangerous. And one of the things that a lot of people seem to miss is that a lot of the issues that were had with nuclear were using technology from the 40s. So when you look at what happened, so much of what happened is using either 40s technology or fairly horrible implementations of 70s or 80s technology. Very little when you look at nuclear is actually using technology from the 2000s or 2010s, much less 2021.
I agree completely. Yes, Gen 4 is the way to go. Literally, the Gen 4 nuclear sites actually use the nuclear waste that's sitting. Where is it? Is it Tennessee or Kentucky? I forgot. We have nuclear waste sitting in one of those places, and they actually use that as fuel.
One of the more difficult questions for close to the end. When it comes to everything that happened last year with the whole defund the police movement and police brutality, how do you answer the concerns that minority communities have about their issues with the police while simultaneously not creating a system whereby law-abiding citizens are fear that the police not being there or not being involved will result in more crime? Like, how do you square that circle? Because you seem to either have people who go, because I walked through some of those protests last year, and I've heard people say defund the police means your budget was $6 billion last year. Why not just bring, or $6 billion this year, $5 billion a few years ago? Why not just bring it back to $5 billion? And it's not about getting rid of them altogether. That's not what we're saying. But the person who was saying that was actually marching right next to someone who had a sign that said abolish the police, and then it said under it, yes, really, abolish the police, and it had circles and underlines. So it's difficult for me to tell what people that are how much agreement there is in those protests, how much agreement there is from one person to another. When I hear that defund means just change certain aspects, and then there's somebody next to them and they're walking on lockstep getting along and says abolish, yes, really. How do you solve that problem? And B, what can you do as a governor to solve that problem?
Yeah, I have a plan. For those of you who care, you can look up Larry Sharpe and the FAQS plan, FAQS, and also Larry Sharpe. I have another bunch. I'll cover that in a second too. Let me first do the FAQS plan. The FAQS plan is local, and then the other plan I bring up is larger. Local, I don't want to defund the police. I want to reorganize them into 4 different groups, and this is literally mostly for urban policing. Policing outside of urban areas, it depends upon how your police force is. I do not want to force people to change their police. What I want to do is I want people to be able to change their police if they want to. So FAQS, F is family law. I want a separate family law division within the police force. That has to have a community group. Every police group has to have a community component. The family law is for people dealing with things like domestic disputes, problems like that. And I want local chaplains to ride with them. Yes, I'm not joking. Local community chaplains to ride with them. Because I don't want a cop who just comes from, say, a horrible, car crash or whatever they're dealing with, and then have to deal with a husband and a wife fighting, right? I don't want that, because he comes from that. Someone's going to jail. Cops are human beings. My father was in law enforcement. He was a subway cop. Then he was a guard at Rikers Island. I don't want that. So I'd rather have someone's sitting there with the chaplain. If it's just a domestic dispute, chaplain handles it. Chaplain doesn't. If it's something serious, the cops there to put a guy on the ground. We got it either way. So that's how we deal with that. And of course they are focused different way. They're not heavily armed. They don't have, assault rifles and such. A is active policing. That's people going after the actual bad guys, right? Going after bad guys, rapists, robbers, murderers, that type of thing. Of course, that piece right there, got to make sure that those people are hardcore. They're heavily, they're more militarized, not militarized, but more than the others, right? They have that piece. Their local component is civilian watch. The civilian watch is great for several reasons. One, the odds of there being a Breonna Taylor situation go down, because when they want to go into that room, they go, no, that's not her apartment. That's her apartment. Let's get the right apartment right now. It assists that. Plus, if you're wealthy, cops don't come to your house unless it's a photo op, right? They call your lawyer and say, hey, I got this warrant for Lewis. Will he show up? Yeah, we'll surround him at 10 o'clock. And they do that, right? That's how that works. Q is quality of life. That's things like noise pollution and things of that sort, right? That kind of thing. That of course is also you can have people like dispatchers. Dispatchers can be people like, the VFW, the American Legion, so that now we know who we're calling and how and that kind of thing. It's better to get them connected. And the last piece is social work. That's things like addiction, homelessness, again, differently, set up. And that has social workers in it, of course, local college kids, even anything, whatever case may be, all of those types of things. Why would I break it up? Several reasons. One, this way you look at your community. Is your community struggling in one or the other? You turn it up on one, turn it down the other, right? If you're in a city, you probably want to have higher quality of life. You're in a city. If you're not, you probably want to have lower quality of life. Not many people doing that, right? So you change and shift depending upon where you are. But more importantly, I want cops to rotate out of active policing. I don't want them in active. I was a Marine. A Marine does not go into combat for more than 15 months. Usually less, usually under 12, but not more than 15. So you have a rule in whatever area makes sense for you. You decide in your own community. Is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever? It's X number of years, and the cop has to rotate out of active policing. You know what? Spend a year in family law. Spend a year in quality of life. Spend a year in social work. Just spend a year someplace else, not in the front line, because you're gonna have issues. Just a human being. It's not a good idea. It's got to be a rule that's local to you. If it isn't the rule, cops aren't going to take it. Cops aren't going to do it. They're going to want to stay on the front line the entire time. So let them rotate out. So that's the first part at local. That's facts. Now, when it comes to big picture, that's called the QUICK program. QICC. I know weak, but I did it anyway. Q is and qualified immunity, right? I don't want cops having qualified immunity. Add on top of that, cops should have their own liability insurance. I have liability insurance. I'm sure you have liability insurance. All professionals have liability insurance. Cops should too. Why? It's not fair. Here's the reason why. If a cop does something wrong, if you have a bad cop, right? If you have an actual bad cop, and I'm not at all cops are bad guy at all, but if you have a bad cop, right? And the cop does something bad, what usually happens, not all usually happens, now it's been different. But recently, what it has been is the cop tends to resign. They resign, with the union. They go to some other state or some other county to get a job again. They do something bad again, right? The guy who what's that guy who killed George Floyd? That guy had a rap sheet. Yeah, he had a rap sheet, right? I mean, it was just bad. But if they have to carry their own insurance, every time they make a mistake, their insurance rates go up. If all of a sudden you have a cop who's not a bad cop and makes a mistake, he pays a year higher in insurance and then he goes on and life is good. If he's a bad cop, he keeps doing bad things, his insurance keeps going up. At that point, he either can't be a cop anymore because it's too expensive, or he can't be insured, in which case he can't be a cop. Either way, the insurance company makes that happen. Well, the unions will hate it. Okay, I have an idea. Let the unions be insurance brokers. So they make money from the insurance. They broker it. If you broker the insurance, the unions now have a vested interest in actually supporting good cops. And not that I don't support good cops, but if you're part of a union, you know what I'm talking about. Most unions in today's world spend 90% of the time dealing with 10% of their bad apples, instead of spending 90% of the time helping 90% of their good apples. This will assist them in doing that. But more importantly than that, now if a cop screws up, we don't pay for it. Right now, we pay for it. The city writes a check. The town writes a check. The state writes a check. Oh my God, we're all paying for it. Cops even talk about it. They even say, "I'm not paying for it." Whatever. They even say that. Ask cops. I know cops. They even say it. So that's not a good idea. Plus, it is now in the city's best interest to cover things up because they're gonna have to pay for it. Well, if they're not paying for it, it's in the city's best interest to just get the truth and to not decide to punish cops or not punish cops or to do anything. Just here's the truth. Insurance company, union, handle it. Way easier if you have that. Second one is a C, and C is end civil asset forfeiture. There should be no civil asset forfeiture. It should not exist whatsoever. If you end civil asset forfeiture, then cops are not incentivized to actually head on out there and grab stuff and take stuff and seize stuff. So we should end civil asset forfeiture. And the last C is take cannabis off Schedule 1. Cannabis should not be on Schedule 1 whatsoever. It should not be a Schedule 1 drug. It should just be a plant. Let's end this and stop the stupidity. Cops should not be busting people for cannabis or civil asset forfeiture. That should end absolutely. So it's the quick plan and the facts plan. They're longer and more, but I don't want to drive your audience crazy. I could spend 3 hours on just these things. But you asked for a plan. Yeah, I have a plan. And again, one quick issue. If you don't like my plan or plans, I'm happy to have a conversation on them. Absolutely. Let me tell you what the left's plan is. Defund the police, get mad, and then refund them later anyway with no change. What's the right's answer? Cops are back to blue, don't change anything. Both of their answers are change nothing. Mine is a real plan.
Here's regardless of what state you're in and regardless of what the political philosophies are of that particular state, regardless of where they lean, who populates them, their culture, the DMV sucks. Is that something that can be fixed or addressed as a governor or not? I spent 3 days on the phone for 8 hours each to try to get a driver's license because my instructor said that I passed. I would get it in the mail. I apparently had to pay $42. I sent it in. They never got it, and I called at 9. They close at 4:30, and I would actually be on hold getting transferred from person to person from 9 to 4:30, and I missed 3 days of work for this. And when I had to change insurance for a vehicle and change my registration over, they actually thought I was driving without insurance because they never got my initial paperwork in spite of the fact that I had proof they signed for it. It's a nightmare. Why is that bad? And how do you actually fix this? Because I remember hearing you say on some podcast, there are people that say, let's get rid of driver's license and get rid of the DMV as a libertarian. And that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more pragmatic solutions.
Absolutely. Yes.
Why does the DMV suck? And how do you fix that, if even?
Have you ever had your car in New York State had an inspection done in your car?
Yes.
Was it a problem?
It took 2 minutes and it was easy and I went.
Yes. The New York State says, here's the rules and regulations. If you do it, you get your stamp. Why can't we do the same for DMV? Yes. Why can't you keep the DMV and allow any other company that wants to do it to do the same thing, follow the guidelines, they do it right, they issue a license? What's the problem? We do it literally with the car that's inspected that might blow up or hurt someone or kill someone. We do that now. There's not a government organization that does your inspection. It's a local garage, right?
Yeah, it was some random hole in the wall garage in Brooklyn.
And there's a flat fee. The state tells them what the fee is. I forgot, it's $49, whatever it is. It's a flat fee. So there's no price gouging. They tell them how much it is, whatever it is. So whatever they say, a license costs whatever, $45 or whatever it is. I don't care. Whatever it is. You can go wherever you got to go. It's going to be an official, licensing facility by New York State. And now you go to the best one. If one sucks, you don't go. They don't make any money. There we go. Done. Easy day. That's your answer. We already do it with something with the car. The more important part, whether the car is going to blow up or fall apart. We already do it.
Someone says the DMV does a lot more than just a license.
So you can just give the license out there. Anything else, you go to DMV. It's fine. Let the licensing be done outsourced. The licensing can be done outsourced. And then anything else can be done at the DMV. I don't have a problem with that.
I was very surprised when I first got my license because I really as someone who leans libertarian, I always thought this idea of getting rid of the DMV or they're not really needed is insane and ridiculous. And then when I actually realized, okay, this is the class they suggest you take, and this is what my test was. My test was on an empty area of Brooklyn that had no traffic. Drive around the block, make a left turn, and then parallel park in an area that's empty. And I thought, like, that's it. You don't want to make sure that I know how to drive on a highway where I'm doing constant lane changes. You don't want to make sure that I know how to do it in an intersection. And I just thought, like, that I've learned more about how to drive from watching YouTube videos than I did from that test. After I took that test, I thought, I am completely unprepared to drive. I want to actually drive with my friend and have him tell me what I should be doing and not doing before I actually get on a road. And
There
I
we
was just
go.
incredibly surprised at how little you needed to know in New York State to be allowed to operate a motor vehicle.
Yeah. Ligma says Missouri has privatized DMVs. Works great. I don't know if that's true, but someone says it, so maybe it's true. So yeah, no. If you ever notice all my issues, what you have to remember is, government is always two things: it's a monopoly and a jobs program, right? It's always those two things. So I'm not a fan of just knocking down government. I'm not. Many libertarians want to do that. I agree. Many do. I don't want to do that, because if you just knock it down, nothing's there, right? Which means you're encouraging a black market, or people don't get serviced. Both are a bad idea. Instead of knocking down the monopoly, knocking down a Goliath, I want to build up a bunch of Davids. You set up an environment where there are many, many Davids that can easily knock it out if they want to, and Davids can support. So then monopoly, either, if it's no longer monopoly, government either gets better or goes away. As long as the community is served, I don't care which one happens.
Let's see. Any other questions here? Any good questions? Good questions.
Everyone thinks because I did the funny Ligma thing. You think I didn't know what Ligma was? I said it on purpose.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
I knew it was great. So they're trying to forward to, what's your opinion on D's? Yeah, you know what these are. You know what these are.
What are your thoughts and opinion on the National Health Service in England?
It's an odd question too.
This is an interesting one. I was a health insurance salesman for about 45 minutes 14 years ago, and the entire I don't like government very much, but my experience as a private health insurance salesman was they spend as much time as humanly possible trying to figure out a way to weasel out of actually paying claims. I'm never going to forget this one experience I had. I'm sorry, because I'm stealing a question.
No, go, please go.
They taught me to not to add every single person that I'm talking to about selling insurance to my phone with all the details as to where I am in the process, so it shows up on screen when they call. And I said, oh, so yeah, so I could walk them through their questions. They said, no, so you never answer again. And I go, you're kidding, right? And they go, no, there's a separate number for that. And if you're not there to expedite their handling of a claim, you're not. If we're not able to, if it winds up not getting paid out, then oh well. And everybody in the room just kind of laughed, and I just thought, are you fucking kidding me? Like I just quit on the spot. I spent over $1,000 on books, training courses to get certified. I just fucking left. It made me sick. So I don't trust the government with a lot of things, but I also think that insurance companies have this fundamental conflict of interest, which is the insurance company is the one that loses money if the claim is valid. The insurance company is the company that decides whether the claim is valid prior to you taking it to court. So there's been a recurring theme on this channel, which shows up a lot, which is that insurance scamming people, screwing people, and just being a giant scam. His question was, what do you think of the National Health Service in England and how they handle things?
Well, Jason is right? Jason just said the whole system's broken. It is. You're right. Health insurance is garbage. What health insurance should be, now it isn't, but what it should be is only for catastrophic stuff. That's what it should be. It's not, right? But that's what it should be. The reality of it is, what we should be doing is assisting people create a better direct care market. That does not exist. That will take time, but we've got to move towards it. Let me give you some ideas on how to make that happen. One of the things to do is, right now, if you're on anything like Medicaid, Medicare, disability, anything like that, the actuaries know about how much money you're going to spend per year. They already got you in a box, right? They know if you're 35 years old, you have this, that, you're going to spend X amount of money. Odds are they know. So for the sake of argument, you're on Medicare and you're going to spend $4,000 a year. I want to give you a debit card with $4,000 on it you can spend at any doctor's office. That's what I want you to do. Any doctor's office that joined the system, you can just swipe and you can go get it. You might go, Larry, why would I want to do that? Two reasons. Number one, if you do that, you will get to see some great doctors if you want to. If you see how it is in New York City right now, many of the best doctors don't take insurance anymore. It's become a two-tiered system. Those who don't take insurance and those who do. So now you can swipe. So you can go to a better doctor. You can go to a holistic doctor if you want to, a naturopathic doctor if you want to, whatever you want, you can go. But Larry, what if we're running out of money? If you run out of money, you're still on Medicaid or Medicare. So you can still go back, right? You can still go back. There's still the system's still there for you. But you got the option to take your $4,000 or whatever the number is and spend it how you want to do it. The reality of it is most people will not use it at all. They'll just do the regular Medicare, whatever. But some people will begin to try it and they'll start and they'll go to a cool doctor. Oh, I like this doctor. And when that begins to happen, other doctors will start going, wait a minute, I can get Medicaid, Medicare money without having to do all of the BS behind it, all the paperwork. Yeah, you can just swipe. You could do it. They'll begin to market towards it. So right there, we begin to get people to start thinking about it. That's at that level. That's at the level of people who are in trouble. Now, for the people who aren't in trouble yet, the next piece is I want to encourage. Do you know the company Forward? You know that company?
Never heard of it.
Forward is a healthcare company now. It's not the only answer, but it's an answer. It's basically you pay $150 per month, and you go to the doctor whenever you want. You just go, no copays. You just go. It's basically like a gym membership. This idea has been tried before, and many times it does happen. Sometimes it works well. And what happens? They often will have a $5 copay. Forward has no copay, but usually you have a $5 copay, which is cheap. Anyone can afford to go to a doctor for $5. You pay a flat fee every month, and you go for $5. Why is that good? Because if there's no insurance company, and the doctors know they're getting whatever, $200 a month, $300, whatever the number is, it's in their best interest for you to not be sick. Right now, in our current insurance system, you need to be sick, which is why at the end of every time you leave a doctor's office, there is either a procedure, a test, or a prescription, because that's how the doctor gets paid. So they always give you that, so they can keep getting paid, right? But if instead the doctor just knew they got their $200 a month, whatever it is, they would actually prefer that you don't have a prescription or whatever. They want you to just be healthy. They might actually help you out. They might actually do a house call in New York City, in New York State right now. If you're in a hospice, you can't do a house call against the law, but you actually could. You could actually do a house call if you want to. We should encourage that also. Right now, that's working relatively well. If that becomes better, now the government can step in and say, "Hey, you, Lewis Rossman Hospital Group, that has a $300 a month payment to have all this stuff. Awesome. I tell you what we do. If you are to take 10% of your population and take poor people for free, and the government decides what's poor, say, for example, I don't know, people who qualify for school lunch as an example. That could be one example of us using it. Then your company will have to pay no state payroll tax. You might go, I'll do that. Now people who are poor, if they wanted to, could come off Medicaid if they wanted to, go to you, and now all of a sudden they're getting same great service without being on Medicare if they want to. And again, it's optional. If you like Medicare, Medicaid, stay on it. If you don't, come off. If my idea is correct, people will move towards it. If I'm wrong, how do you lose? You stay on Medicaid, Medicare. You stay on it. But my idea is voluntary. I believe it will work. I think Forward is the future. I think these ideas are the future. I think we can do it. Now, I'll go one step further. We can do one more thing. We can do a sovereign fund. Someone here said, I'm in Norway and I did so-and-so. That's awesome. Norway is literally an oil field with 5 million people sitting on it. There's less people in Norway than there are in New York City. And they have a sovereign fund. Their sovereign fund in Norway pays for all their goodies. That's why you can do so much in Norway, right? Their sovereign fund is sometimes $1 trillion. That's the money they make from the oil field. So why can't New York follow Norway's model? I agree, Norway, I'm with you. Let's do that. New York State should build those 3 nuclear power plants I said, sell the excess energy, create a New York State sovereign fund, pay for healthcare to get people rocking and rolling into this mode. I think we can get people into a direct care mode. Why do I think that's better? Here's the reason why. There is an actual medical industry that basically runs parallel to our current one, and that is the non-essential industry. LASIK eye surgery, cosmetic dentistry, breast enhancements, right? All those types of things, right? And in every case, in all of those, price has gone down, accessibility has gone up, service has gotten better in all of them. And those compared to our other system are not regulated and almost no insurance. Yet in every case, it's gotten better. When I was a kid, the only people who got cosmetic dentistry were like movie stars. Now everybody gets it. LASIK eye surgery used to pay per eye. Per eye, it was so expensive. Everybody gets it.
Do you think it's a good idea to have all healthcare government controlled to prevent greed with health insurance and pharmaceutical companies? From Dan Gershkovich.
Has that ever worked once? Never. Every time when you create one big thing, all you do is make grift easier. That's all you do. It will be worse and you will have no recourse. Your DMV answer is the perfect example. You will have no recourse when things go wrong. The DMV screwed you over, and what's your recourse? Nothing. When the DMV makes a mistake, what do they do? Give it more money. When our system is horribly broken, what will they do? Give it more money. What recourse will you have? None. And here's the worst part. The wealthy will still get what they want anyway, because the wealthy always do. In all those European countries, they have a two-tiered system. The wealthy have supplemental or special insurance, as they always do, and they get what they want, and the regular people get whatever's left over. Now, their systems are better because their systems weren't built like ours. The government decided to get involved after World War II. Maybe people don't know this. And the government got involved and decided you can't raise rates. You can't raise salaries because price fixing always works. It never works. So what happened? Businesses started without question to now start to give other benefits, which is healthcare. That's how we tied healthcare to businesses. The other countries don't have that. We have that because government stepped in. We have to somehow break us of that. It's not going to be easy.
There are people in my chat. I don't know if Daniel Smullen is still here, if he's gone to sleep, or if he is still here procrastinating, defending his PhD thesis, that lived in Canada and thought that their system works incredibly well. And up there, they seem to spend less money per capita on their healthcare than we do and have less shitty results. So, for instance, I went over one of these. I skid over one of these grids that didn't, whether they're using construction, that didn't have any traction on it. I got a $1,000 Uber ride in the ambulance from 12th Street to 25th Street, where Bellevue was. And when I got in there, there was someone that put a thing next to my head to see if it was bleeding. He looked. 5 seconds later, he said it's not. I got put in a room. I got a cup, a piece of bread, and a slice of American cheese that had a hair on it, and that gave me a $5,500 bill, which I offered them $1,500 in cash for the 10 minutes I spent in the hospital, and to putting the thing in my head. I never heard back. I said, screw this. And it's like that system kind of sucks for a lot of people. And it's either that or you pay for an insurance with an insanely high deductible that covers virtually nothing. That would have actually covered very little, if any, of that actual hospital visit.
No, look, could we get a better system than we have now? Yeah, I agree. I just don't think that's easy. So many people are like, I hear this all the time, just get rid of private insurance. I mean, people are telling me, Larry, your stuff doesn't work. You're going to fight big insurance companies? Aetna? Blue Cross Blue Shield? You're not winning that battle. What's wrong with you? You're not winning that battle. That's not a thing. That's just not a thing. It doesn't work. This country is far too corrupt for that. It's just not going to happen. So, and then why in the world would you want the amount of corruption we have in our current two-party system, which is all about moving forward on nothing and just punishing the other? You want that to work in our current government system? I don't know why you'd want that. The amount of grift and pain. Someone put, private money will always be about the private system. Money's all over our government system. Our government is nothing but a massive grift. And the best example I can show you right now is Afghanistan. It was a multi-trillion-dollar grift. They robbed us for 20 years. If you think that we're going to be any better, I don't know why you would think that. I'm not saying my plan's perfect either. My plan is not perfect either. I just think mine is better. It could actually work over time in our system, and people could actually do it. That's what I believe. And again, if I'm wrong, as I say all the time, I'm happy to have a conversation. But this, we'll just get rid of private insurance overnight. No, you're not. Stop. Where's Bernie now? Right? Stop. The Democrats didn't want Bernie. Republicans don't want Bernie either. It's not going to happen.
I'm going to modify this question a little bit without changing the spirit of it, just to make it, I think, a bit more informative. What are your thoughts on critical race theory? And B, what would you think as a governor, regardless of your thoughts on critical race theory, how would you deal with mandates that it either be taught or not be taught in schools?
I
think those are two separate things.
Sure. I can't stand how we've politicized everything. And once you politicize it, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong or means anything. This is the hard part. We're not actually teaching critical race theory in schools. We're teaching something that's terrible that they're calling critical race theory. What they're teaching is bad, but it's actually not critical race theory, but it's called critical race theory, so I might as well call it that. Critical race theory in reality is, again, not what's being taught, but being called that, is just looking at things through a racial way, right? So I could literally say critical constitutional theory, meaning I'm looking at everything through the lens of a constitution. As an example, I could look at gun control through the Constitution, saying the Second Amendment means you shouldn't do it, or gun control was racist because it was meant to keep guns out of black people's hands after the Civil War. I'm looking at an issue from the Constitution or race. That's what it was supposed to be. That's what actual critical race theory is. Now, I know what's actually happening. CRT, what's being taught in schools now, is being called CRT, but it's not CRT, but it's bad. What's being taught in our schools now is not good. So I will use CRT because the audience understands it as CRT, knowing that it's not real CRT. CRT being taught in our schools is a terrible idea. It is not the right answer. Now, are you telling me, should we talk about our history? Yes, we should. I have no problem with talking about our history, slavery, all those things. But CRT itself, the way it's being taught in schools now, I have two kids in school. One's 11, one's 17. All it does is make things worse. It is not helpful. It makes people who are of color feel bad. It makes people who are not of color feel bad. It divides people. It breaks down the family. It is a terrible idea. We should not be teaching what they're calling CRT in school now.
How does it break down the family? And if
sure.
something I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. Because what winds up happening is now a kid comes home and say you're a white kid. You're a white kid. And the white kid comes home to his white parents and goes, you know, ma, we oppress people. You're an oppressor. The fact that we're white, you're an oppressor. How does mom and dad take that? Now I got the school fighting against the parents. Or if you're black, say you're a black kid, you come home. You know, mom and dad, one of the reason why you didn't do well, ma, the reason why you didn't get a good job is because you're black. How's mom feel about that? Now they're fighting. So no, that's what I mean by that. It's a problem. It's not what they're teaching is a problem. It's not good at all. And worst part is my kids are mixed. So now when my kids come home, you know what they get? You're not black enough. You're white passing. So my kids get, you're white passing, or you're not white passing, or you're too white passing, or you're not black enough. That's what my kids get. So what's being taught is a terrible idea. It's not, and people say all the time say they're not teaching CRT. And that's why I was very clear my distinction. Actual critical race theory is actually not being taught. There's something being taught in school that's called CRT that is bad. That's why I want to make sure that clarity on what is being done, right? There's two separate things, but that is a bad idea. It does not help. Now, I want to be clear. You can talk about slavery, about the bad things that happen in this country. Of course you should. I mean, of course. But the difference is, are you blaming? And this goes back to the idea of what they call systemic racism. And people will say all the time, there's no such thing as systemic racism. Of course there is. But there's a problem here. What people are doing right now is saying there's systemic racism and white people are bad. That makes no sense. If there's systemic racism, white people aren't the problem. The system's the problem. So why are you saying white people are the problem? What is this idea of being whiteness, all that stuff? Holy crap, that's stupid. Why are we using phrases like white supremacy? What a terrible phrase to use.
I think they're claiming that white people created the system. So if the system is bad and it was created by white people, therefore the white people are bad because they
white people who've been dead for hundreds of years. Right. White people who've been dead for. We had a black president and he's still in the war on drugs. Black cops shoot black people. Hispanic cops shoot black people. It's the system that's bad. It's not the people. Yeah, we shouldn't have. I'll give you an example of this. That should be clear. I hope will be clearer. I don't believe at all the average cop comes onto the academy and goes, I can't wait to kill black people. I don't believe that at all. Is there probably one bad guy? I'm sure there's one bad guy who does that, but I don't believe that at all. I don't think they're in any way, shape, or form saying, I'm going to go beat people up or hurt people. I don't believe that at all. I think they join the police force for one or two reasons. One, they think it's a good job, or two, they want to make something good and be a good guy. I think one of those two things are true usually for people who join the police force. Well, say you're in New York City or some other large city. And now because of the system, which is civil asset forfeiture and the war on drugs, because of those two systemic issues created years ago, now the cops have to raise money through the war on drugs. So what do? They go hunt. They have to. Now, there's not an actual quota system, but the system says you need to bring money in. So what winds up happening? So now the cops start hunting. Are they going to hunt in wealthy communities? No, they're going to hunt in poor communities. Wealthy communities are full of people who have money, who have lawyers, who know the law, who vote for the mayor, who know the mayor. They're going to hunt there. You hunt in a poor neighborhood. Most of the poor neighborhoods you hunt in are going to be brown and black communities in most large cities. So that's where you hunt. Now, this is not true out in more poor areas. In poor areas, you hunt in white poor communities, but there are more people in cities, so it's more often in the black communities. So they go in brown and black communities. So now they hunt there. Now you're a cop. You've been hunting in brown and black communities for 10 years. Everyone you see that you've been arresting has been brown or black. You start feeling like, man, maybe brown and black people are bad. The system has made you do this, not you. You didn't come in any worse or any better. Not just that. Did I say urban? I'm sorry, Michael said rural. I didn't mean rural. In rural areas, they're more often white. Urban areas are usually black or brown, usually. More rural areas are usually white, usually. And again, there's exceptions. So now you have now what happens is the system winds up putting more black people in jail by percentage because those are the people the cops are targeting because they're easy targets to feed the system of the war on drugs and civil asset forfeiture. That's the system. People are, to be forward, and some people get angry when I say this, but I'm going to tell you what I really believe. I think the average white guy in America doesn't care about race at all. Just wakes up in the morning and is like, let me go do my thing, and follows the systems that they have in front of them. If that system moves towards racism because the system does it, then they will act accordingly. They will respond to their system as cops will or firefighters will or whatever. I'll do the banking piece. Redlining happened years ago. People know about redlining where they physically wouldn't let black people. This was a government-sponsored piece. And again, government-sponsored. Government said if you were to build a new community out and get the special mortgage rates, there could be up to 30% of Jews, Irish, or Italians. That's a federal guideline. 0 blacks. That was federal because the average person didn't care. They had to make a law because the average person wanted to sell their home. They didn't care. So government had to make people racist. And that sounds crazy, but it's true. People are naturally tribal. We're not naturally racist. We're naturally tribal. But we can make tribes over anything. Tribes over baseball teams, cities. It doesn't have to be race.
That's an important distinction. And you know, there's a lot of it in modern politics.
100%. We are tribal, not naturally racist. We are naturally tribal, can be over anything. So what happened? The government made us racist. Literally, the system made us more racist. So now the system said, you can't have this. So now that actually ended in the 80s. So now all of a sudden people say, well, it ended in the 80s. Oh my God, it ended in the 80s. See, why are black people angry now? Now they can't get loans. Well, of course they can't get loans Well, because racist bankers. No, bankers are just bankers. They were looking through the things, and who didn't have good credit? Black people didn't because they were redlined for 40 years. The white families had better credit because they weren't redlined for 40 years. So the 40 years before affected them now in 1980, 1990, and 1995. That affected them now. It wasn't racist bankers. Oh, bankers are racist. No, they're just doing a job. But the system had screwed over the black families for 40 years. That's what I mean by systemic racism. There was systemic racism, not racist bankers or racist cops or racist this or racist that. If it's a system, not the people. So instead of me being mad at white people or saying don't be white or don't be whatever, instead I should say, hey, white people, I hope you see these systems that were racist that, by the way, are now affecting you, because now poor whites are being affected by the war on drugs the same as black people were in the 90s. It was an epidemic for us in the 80s and 90s, white people now, and gun control, which was originally done to keep guns out of hands of slaves, now affecting you. Why don't you join me in changing these systems? How about you join me? Way better. CRT is going backwards. Teach the system, not that people are bad. The systems are bad. Many of them were created years ago based upon racist ideas by people who are now long dead. Let's now join with the people who have been affected by it, and let's change the system.
Private W is saying that is actually what is being taught in school, not your version of CRT. They're not teaching that specific types of people are bad. I went to I quit college in 2009, and I have not been in high school since 2006. So I will admit I have no idea what is being taught in schools whatsoever.
But
that's a comment that came up several times from several different people.
In college, they are correct. In college, they teach actual CRT. That's true. If you're going to college, you can actually learn it. That's true. Lawyers often learn it, how to deal with laws through the lens of race. So CRT is taught in college. That's accurate. And if that's what they mean, that's correct. That's what they're taught. But if you look at what's actually being taught in the schools, I know I have kids in school. I know. And I see how they come up and how they talk to me and how they feel and how some of my kids don't want to go back to school. How race has become so huge in their life when it wasn't a huge part of their life if you go back 3 years ago.
One of the things that comes up in my comment section a lot is that by driving to Tennessee or North Carolina or Florida, that I am being a pussy, that I am not fighting to make a better state or city that I would live in and do business in, as someone who's lived here for 32 years, and that they say that I have 1 foot out the door. And I kind of do. And I may have 1.5 feet out the door, depending on how my conversation and negotiation goes with my landlord tomorrow morning. But what is it that drove you to say, I don't like the way New York is governed? I'm actually going to run for governor, and in spite of the very minuscule chance of me getting more than 2% of the vote, rather than just vote with your feet and go to a state or a city or an area that more accurately represents your values and your philosophy.
I was ready to leave too, brother. In 2017-ish, 2016-ish, I was like, I'm out. And so I was going to move to, believe it or not, to Charlotte, North Carolina. That was what I was thinking. Because to do what I do for a living, I have to have a big city, right? To do the consulting that I do. So I was considering moving to Charlotte, and I went to Charlotte to check it out. And when I went there, I realized how good it was compared to New York. I could sell my house in Queens and buy a mansion. Taxes were low. And I thought, maybe this is not a bad idea. And I got upset. I said, why in the hell do I have to leave my city, leave my state, leave my business, leave everything? And I got angry. And I said, you know what? I'm going to change stuff. So I decided I'm going to come back and change stuff. I was hoping that I would just do better. Did I think I could win? I think up front, I did believe I could win. I think anyone who begins to run, all of us who run as I do are part narcissists. People tease me about being a narcissist. It's true. You can't run for office and put up with what I put up with without having a bit of an ego. It is true. No one who runs as I do doesn't. So guilty as charged. So I tried, right? And I thought in the beginning that maybe I could win. Then I realized soon that it was impossible. Once I saw the system, I was like, okay, I can't win. But I thought I could do much better. I did believe that. Even at the end, I thought I could do much better. And I thought if I did well enough, then people would pay attention to me and then my ideas would get out, because I had tons of ideas, as I've told you, many of them, and I make more all the time, that people start thinking the way I'm thinking and stop just fighting each other and instead try to find answers. That's what I believed. Clearly, I was incorrect, but I'm telling you, that's what I believed. And now I'm still thinking of living, but now it's not North Carolina anymore. I'm thinking about moving to Tennessee.
So, why Tennessee? Not because I'm browsing or anything, just out of curiosity. What
no,
like
I was thinking of going to Chattanooga, because Chattanooga has the best internet in the country, and it's 2 hours from Nashville, 2 hours from Atlanta, and no income tax. That's why. So 2 hours from two big cities and no income tax. That's what I was thinking. So I was considering it too. I was considering it. And now I'm thinking, do I want to give it one more shot? Do I want to give it one more shot to fix my state? That's where I am right now. I got to start thinking, do I want to fix my state or not?
I think it comes down to, if you how do I put this? I don't even know if this is a question or a statement, but if you have a certain set of values and the people around you don't, is it on you for not fixing it, or is it on them? Because some of the policy proposals that you may have for how to fix things, other people here may think that's horrible to me. I would consider that more broken than fixed.
Oh, and most people do. Doesn't make sense. Oh my God. Most New Yorkers do. You see it in your chat. Just, oh, that's terrible. They just do it, right? They can't stand it. I see all the time. People call me crazy, dumb, think I'm mean, whatever, all the time. But at least I'm giving them answers. And what I do find is many people, even though they can't stand what I'm saying, if I get in the discussion, they have to come up with an answer of their own. And I don't care if I'm completely wrong and you actually use none of my answers, none of them, but you actually fix my state with your own ideas that are better than mine. I'm in. I remember when I was on Joe Rogan, at the end of Joe Rogan, he said, Larry, these are good ideas. Where'd you come up with these ideas? And I said, me and my team made them up. He goes, you better lock them down. I said, why? He said, people will steal them. I said, great, steal them. Then I don't have to run again. Fix my state. I'll go back home. I don't want to run and ruin my finances and my family if I don't have to. Take all of them. Fix my state. I'll go back to work. It's fine. So even if all of them are wrong, fine. At least what I would ask you, and when I was at the state fair this weekend, met hundreds of people, I said, every answer I gave you, you've never heard before. And everybody was like, you're right. I haven't, unless you knew me already. And I said, not just that, no Democrat or Republican has actually given you an answer. Here's my Democrat answer, my Republican answer. Ready? Larry, Mr. Democrat, Mr. Republican, how are you going to fix education? We're going to support our kids. We're going to, by supporting them. Okay, great. How? By supporting them and supporting teachers, and we got to support them. That's the answer. That's the answer. Now, if you're a Republican, you say we're going to invest. If you're a Democrat, you say we're going to fund. Both mean more taxes. You just use different words. That's literally their answers. And if you watch any Sunday show, watch any Republican Democrat talk, they will always say that. How are you going to fix healthcare? We're going to support them and give you good and make it free. Great. How? By making it free, by making it good. Great. How? If they're a Democrat, by funding. If they're a Republican, by investing. That's it. There's no answer. Check their websites. Check their web pages. There's no actual plan. We got to support, stand up and fight. They say horse shit like that. I got to stand up and fight and say the right thing. That's what they do. They just say stuff. It's garbage. I give you an actual plan. And the funny part is, people get mad at me. That plan's stupid. Where's yours, wise ass? You got nothing.
Well, I think the idea is, if you make the plan vague, then people cannot get mad at you when they think it's a
Correct.
bad idea. If you lead with the intention rather than the details, then the plan can be whatever someone projects in their mind is the best thing, so you get the widest possible coalition to vote for you. That's my my guess.
You are correct. Absolutely.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, your ideas, or hear what you have to say about things?
And well, without question, if you want to, no worries. You can go to LarrySharpe.com if you want to check out my policy. That's my political page. Or I do a podcast, which I'm on almost every night at 7 p.m. Tonight, I took on you versus going to my own cast, which is sharpeway.com. If you look behind my head here, The Sharpe Way, sharpeway.com. That is on the internet, all the webs stuff, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the things.
I also screwed up. I forgot. There's one last question. Kathy, who is replacing Andrew Cuomo as governor. What are your thoughts
Governor
on
Hochul.
her? I don't know much about her. I don't have any thoughts on her, but I'm curious your thoughts. A lot of people have been saying, does this mean New York State has gotten better because you don't have Cuomo? My guess has been no, because much of what makes New York State a mess is far more than just one governor. But what are your thoughts on her and what she means for the state?
I think she's better than Cuomo, but Cuomo is that's not a high bar. And the reason why she's better is not policies. Her policies are as bad as Cuomo's. Cuomo was a mafia thug monster. She is not that. So we no longer have a mafia thug monster as a governor. We just have a really bad queen. So yeah, that's what I think.
All right, that's it for today. And as always, I hope you all learned something. Thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. And Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was amazing. And my apologies, it took 2.5 years for me to get back to you and schedule it.
I guess I'll see you in another 2.5 years.
All right, I'll see you later. Thank you so much. All right. And